Hey, what's going on, everyone? Let's see. All right. See a few people popped in. Good to see you, everyone. Jerry, what's up? Give me one sec. Let's, Jerry, so in order for me to add you on the live, you're going to need to be on your phone. You can't be on your desktop. I found out this rule like 3 lives ago. One of our IT guys mentioned that. So, Lopez, good to see you, man. Let me know what's new in your corner in your life. Good to see everyone here. Randy, what's up? Let me know how you're doing. Let me know how the lean bulk is going. You're looking good as always. Theo, good to see you as well. Give it a second, guys. We're going to have a guest today because I like to put the spotlight on my clients. You know, that's what the fitness industry is all about. Not so much like having me in the spotlight every single day, every single live. I like to really help shine the light on a lot of my clients because you guys will also learn from their journey, and I'm sure can pick up some stuff from them and stuff of that sort. So give it a sec. Okay, cool. And let's see here. So sending an invite. Added the wrong person. Sorry, guys. Give me one sec. Give me one sec. You know, I'm not the best with all this stuff. Boom. Approve. Send invite. Cool. I think we got it. Freddie, I think I accidentally sent you an invite. I'm sorry. I'll have you on the show another day, man. Really sorry about that. Shalil, good to see you. Theo. Okay, give it a sec, guys. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but no biggie. Let's see. Shalil, good to see you. James, good to see you as well. Let me know what's new in your guys' corner, man. I hope you guys are having a good week. I'm going to go visit my parents on Sunday, so I'm looking forward to that. I haven't seen them in a little bit, but I do try to keep in touch with them through phone calls and stuff of that sort. So I'm going to stay up at their place for 2 weeks and catch up with them. So it'll be good to see my dad and my mom as well. Michael, good to see you. Thanks for being a part of the group for so long already. So I appreciate it. Good to see you as always. Give it a sec, guys. Let me see what's up here. Approve. So set a custom audience. I'm sending an invite. Invite Jerry to join the camera. Yep. All right, cool. I think we got it down this time. Perfect. Hey, what's up, Jerry? Let me know if you can hear me. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey,
Long time no see. It's been probably like, we keep in touch, of course, on Facebook and text back and forth, of course. But I think, honestly, it's been, I don't even know when we trained together. It's probably been like a good, I don't know, like 5-6 years at this point. I already forgot and lost track, man. Do you remember even what year we trained together?
Probably like 2013, 2014.
Damn, it's been,
Right?
yeah, it's been that
It's
long.
been
I
a
didn't
while.
think
It's
it was
been a
that
long
long.
time. In
Yeah.
person. In
So
person.
Jerry and I kind of I trained him like a long time ago. I even forgot the date already. I forget like the dates of a lot of my clients here, but I'm happy to see him, and we kept in touch. And I wanted to invite him on the show just to kind of have some coffee shop talk, and moreover, just to kind of honestly catch up with him, but also talk to him about his journey and stuff of that sort. He came in like many years ago, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because it's been a long time, but we went to both to UCI. I don't know which year. I think I graduated before you for sure. What year did you graduate again?
I think we overlapped for a little bit. I was 2011.
Okay, yeah, I graduated in 2009. So out with the old, in with the new. You know, yeah. So I
Yep.
don't ever remember seeing him on campus, but it was cool that we went to the same school. And Jerry reached out to me like a long while back. I believe his goal back then was he had like some stubborn body fat on his lower chest and his midsection. That's very common. A lot of people struggle with that. Even people that work out a lot and diet a lot, they seem to kind of always struggle getting like really kind of leaning out that chest, making it look really sharp and dense, and also just getting rid of that stubborn pocket of fat in the lower midsection and love handles. So I would like to honestly talk to you about like a lot of stuff, including remote work, you know, corporate work, Because Jerry's a great example of creating like lasting change. As you guys know, I covered it in many, many lives. 80 to 90% of people that lose their weight literally end up regaining it like 2 to 4 years later, plus like an extra 5 or so pounds every single time. And they typically repeat the cycle over and over again. And a lot of times, honestly, it's just because they never changed the environment that led to all those issues. That's one of the biggest culprits, and obviously not changing the belief system that led them to find it acceptable to be in that environment. But Jerry is a great example of a really successful story in the sense that he did end up getting pretty ripped, and he kept off that excess body weight already for, I don't know, like 5, 6 years or so, something along that time frame, while staying busy. You know, he didn't take the extreme lifestyle like me of only working 2 days a week, remote and stuff. So he's a good example of like, hey, you know, you could pursue like a corporate career, be successful, work up the chain, and still maintain your physical and mental health. And we're going to kind of dive into that. So Jerry, where do you want to start? Do you want to start like way back when you kind of gained all that weight before you even reached out for training, and then we'll kind of go from there? Or...
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and
cool.
get started that way?
So yeah, go for it, man. It's your show.
I mean, so I think I just graduated from college, and so I was new to kind of the corporate lifestyle. And so when you work in corporate lifestyle, especially at the very beginning of your career, you don't have a lot of time for yourself because you're kind of the little bitch, kind of, to put it in layman's terms. So you're kind of working long hours, kind of don't have the capability to either have kind of scheduled workouts because your hours may vary, or your diet may also not be kind of on track because you're either eating fast food because it's the easiest, or you're working late and, you know, the company brings in food, which typically tends to be like pizza or something unhealthy. So I think the first 2 years post college were probably the most difficult because I had that transition of stressing for the new job. The hours were inconsistent, the diet was inconsistent. So it was really kind of, when I reached out to you, it was more in regards to kind of like, how do I cope with this new lifestyle and implement kind of lifestyle changes that I can incorporate into my new work life.
Got it. I always wondered with corporate, like why they always serve like such like shit food, you know? It's like, what's wrong with just serving like a really good tasting steak or chicken or fish or something like that? People will still like it, but they're not going to become like obese and super lethargic after they eat your like meal all the time, you know?
Yeah, and I think the thing that I've learned over the years now is that you can actually ask whoever's ordering food to order you something healthy. Like, that's what I do now. Like, you know, they always kind of like give a heads up of like, hey, we're gonna be ordering food or whatever it may be. Like, I always like reach out like, hey, like, can you like order, like, if they say we're gonna order from XYZ, I'll either say I have dietary restrictions. So the easiest thing for me in a corporate environment when it comes to unhealthy food is just saying that I do dairy free. Because if you say dairy free, more than likely the option is going to be healthy. Because anything that has cheese from some sort of takeout is going to be unhealthy. So it's going to be the pizza, blah, blah, blah. So kind of my easiest cheat way, if you don't want to seem like you're kind of being uber healthy, is, hey, I'm dairy free. Can you bring in a dairy free option? And whenever you kind of ask for a dairy free option, by default, that tends to be a healthier option. So that's kind of my go-to request whenever I kind of have any type of like takeout food in a work environment. But otherwise, like, if you're like, for me, like, I'm at the point where I don't care, so I'll tell them like, hey, can I get like this special dish, whether it be like, you know, the chicken dish or whatever it may be, and I'll have my own sort of meal. But I just kind of have lost the embarrassment of asking, because I think you kind of have to take ownership of what you put into your body. And I think that's one of the things that I learned from you, Eugene, is you're responsible for what you put into your body. And so if you just kind of roll with whatever's given to you, you're never really going to achieve your goals. So for me, like, I'm very conscious of what I put into my body. Not all the time, like, I'm not extreme like you, but I do try to think about what goes into my body, because it also impacts my energy for my next day's workouts, how I feel, my emotions. There's so many factors of what you put into your body from a dietary standpoint that not just affect your hunger, but all these other factors that you'll feel if you kind of go off the rails.
Yeah, and I always tell people, like, sometimes people are like, well, I'm too busy to lose weight. I'm like, dude, you don't even need to work out to lose weight, you know? You just need to like eat well, and you got to eat no matter whether you're busy or not busy, you know? So might as well make the right choices and and just do yourself a favor, because becoming busy plus overweight plus not liking how you're looking or feeling is not going to make the situation any better of like what you're currently in and stuff of that sort. There's a lot that goes into it, but
For sure. I mean, I think that was probably the most important thing that I learned from you is like there's all these like fad diets. And even like for me, like I have so many friends who work or are part of the health industry, whether they're nutritionists or they're personal trainers. Like I have probably like 20 personal trainer friends, and they're so uneducated as far as kind of food and nutrients because they just kind of read or see what's on social media. And for me, like I kind of let go of that. Like I actually still
oh,
use
nice.
your spreadsheet of, the meals with the macros to kind of calculate what to meal prep out. But at the end of the day, kind of like you always say, is calories in, calories out. Yes, there's other factors like micronutrients. So yes, you can eat 1,000 calories of a cheeseburger and it's going to be from an energy standpoint the same as 1,000 calories of a salad, but you're not getting the micronutrients that you get from a salad. So from a calories in, calories out, I still kind of have that in the back of my mind, but I also kind of think of the micronutrients associated with that. So, 1,000 calories is something unhealthy. Yes, it's going to give you, calories is just a measure of energy. So, 1,000 calories is something unhealthy is going to give you the same energy as the 1,000 calories is something that's healthy, but the healthy has a micronutrients that are going to impact those other things. So like fiber, for example, right? So fiber keeps you full longer, so you won't kind of have that like itch to go munch on something a couple hours later. So for me, like a lot of my food is high fiber, so I feel like I struggle more with
Yeah.
having to eat enough calories because a lot of the food that I eat is very high in fiber and very high in volume, right? So, 1,000 calories of vegetables is like this versus 1,000 calories of a
Hmm.
cheeseburger, which is this tiny. So for me, like sometimes I find myself at the end of the day and I still have like 2 meal preps left. So I'm like on the couch, like trying to like scarf it down because if I don't eat it, then the next day, then I won't have the energy. So it's kind of, it's somewhat of a balance. You just kind of have to make it your normal and kind of enjoy it. Like for me, like I actually enjoy eating healthy. If you cook it properly, like it tastes good. Like it's not like it doesn't taste good. And even like now, things like fast food, when I do eat it, it's so salty to me because it's just so high in sodium compared to what I'm used to eating that like I don't even enjoy it because all I taste is
All
the
I taste
salt.
is like cancer. I eat like fast food. I'm
Yeah.
like,
I mean, no, don't get me wrong. I still let myself to eat, things on a daily occasion. I think that's the other thing too, is I think a lot of people fail when it comes to their dietary goals because they think about it 24/7 and food is on their mind 24/7. So for me, the other thing that I kind of learned from you is like during the week, Monday through Friday is very easy for me because I sit on my desk, 8 to 10, sometimes 12 hours a day. So for me, like I'm not really tempted to like eat bad. Um, but I think if you're thinking about food all the time, then you kind of have these like negative connotations and feelings towards food that for me, like I just kind of use it now as like food is just energy. Like Monday through Friday, like it's just fuel. So
that's
I
such a
don't need to
Trufkin
like
athletics thing of you to say.
indulge on
You can
yeah.
tell he's been
Yeah,
Eugene Trufkin
yeah,
client.
that's the thing.
If he's
That's
using
that's that's
spreadsheets, he
that's
doesn't
what
see
you
food,
would
he just
always
sees
say.
numbers.
It totally is too. And like so for me, like I know that on the weekends I'm gonna be so I'm not like you, Eugene. Like I don't have the luxury of like living in the middle of nowhere and then like making like 24/7, 7 days a week, eating what I have in front of me. But I know that on the weekends I'm going to be eating out because things happen. We are a very social society. So I know that I'm going to be in situations where I won't have my broccoli, rice, and chicken meal prep, but also I kind of take that into consideration during the week. So like I know, like I think it's really important to know how many calories you track or you burn on a daily basis. I think like for me, like I have an iWatch that I track because I want to make sure if I have certain goals that I'm eating enough compared to what I'm burning, or if I want to maybe like lean down that I'm slightly under calories, or if I want to gain a little bit more weight or want to lift a little bit heavier, like the day before leg day, I typically eat more than I burn that day because I want that excess energy the following day. So for me, like during the week, I eat at a slight calorie deficit, knowing that on the weekends I'll kind of replenish that because it's not like it's
Hmm.
kind of like a bank account, right? It's like money in, money out. So that's kind of how I track it. Like I know that on a daily basis, I burn around 3,000 calories. So that times seven is what, 21,000 calories a week that I'm burning. So if on the weekdays I'm eating like 25 to 2,800 calories, I'm kind of banking those extra calories. And on the weekend, I don't have to think about or count calories, or I can just eat that extra cookie or eat that slice of pizza or whatever it may be and not think about it and still enjoy life and be social. Because I think when you limit yourself from a social standpoint, that's where you're setting yourself up for failure. Like if you're a very social individual and you're out and about all the time, if you're not enjoying the social setting because you're limiting yourself to what you're eating, then I think you need to kind of take a step back and think about what you're eating overall, not just on that day, and maybe make slight adjustments. Not to say like, starve yourself the next day, because I think that's complete like inefficient. Like I know a lot of people who will not, especially like I have a lot of girlfriends who, for them, like being slender and thin is very important to them. So if they know they're going to eat out for dinner somewhere, like they'll starve themselves the entire day. And I'm like, that's not healthy. Like, there's other things that you're doing to your body by doing that. You're impacting your hormones. There's all these other chemical imbalances that you're doing by these inconsistent, like, eating habits that, I mean, if you're going to indulge one day, if you eat an extra 1,000 calories one day, that's not going to make you gain, 20 pounds the following day. So just let it be, enjoy it, and then just get back on track the following
Yeah,
day.
you always got to kind of look in like you're kind of looking at it in like weekly averages, monthly averages, quarterly averages, like what's your yearly goal? Not so much like, oh, you mess up like one of the days and it's all like downhill. But a lot of times the problem is people don't have that game plan. They are literally like day to
For
day
sure.
kind of mindset. And when
For
you're in
sure.
that mindset,
You
yeah,
you
and
have
when
to
you're
be
in,
consistent. You have to be consistent in the way that you operate. And so for me, like I operate in week work days because my Monday through Friday is completely different than my Saturday and Sunday. Like my Monday through Friday, I work from home, so I'm home all day. Like I'm not tempted by going out to eat with coworkers, or I'm not tempted by, those bagels that someone brings into the office. So for me, so I think you always kind of have to think about your lifestyle. So for me, like would the goal be to kind of have your lifestyle where you can kind of control everything you eat? Probably, but you're like in Texas in like the forest or something. At least that's what it appears like on Facebook. Like for me, like I'm not in that setting. So I think everyone just needs to kind of like understand what lifestyle they live in, but then also um be consistent, but what's the word? Like you kind of have to hold by what your values are. So I think one of the things that I notice is that people shame you more for eating healthy than eating unhealthy. Like if I go out to eat with friends and I eat I pick the healthy option, everyone's like, "Ooh, why are you eating healthy?" Or like, "Ooh, don't you want to eat something better?" I'm like, "Well, there's not better or worse. It's
Mhm.
calories, it's fuel, right?" And so what I've noticed is that a lot of people kind of like look down on eating healthy, and I think that's what makes a lot of people feel shamed about sticking to what they really want to eat when they go out. So for me, like I don't care, I'll get the healthy option. Most of the times it tastes better, it's more full. Honestly, most of the times when they bring it out, most people are like, "Oh, that looks better than like what I ended up getting," because most of the time what they ended up
Looks
getting
like
looks like some
SpongeBob made the
processed
food,
ragu
you know?
thing. Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. So I think for me, it's more about I needed to assess my lifestyle, and that's kind of why I kind of bank my calories, because I know that on the weekends I'm a very social individual. Like if we're friends on Facebook, you'll see that I'm always out and about. So for me and my lifestyle, like I know that on the weekends I won't be able to 100% stick to my typical healthy lifestyle. So during the weekdays, I make those slight adjustments so that I can indulge on the weekends and not feel bad about it, or not have to take other extreme measures to like overcompensate for whatever I did on the
Yeah, and
weekend.
about that social pressure thing, I think that's important. It's funny. It's like when people say like, "Oh, you're eating that way," that's like not normal. I'm like, wait a minute, that is what eating normal is. First of all, like the way the average
Yeah,
American eats is definitely not normal. That's why 9 out of 10 American adults now are metabolically unhealthy, and pretty much anywhere you step outside in America, especially in the corporate world, I mean, 9 out of 10 people you run into are full
yeah,
of obesity, misery, and disease. There's a reason for that. It just doesn't happen overnight. Nutrition is a big part of it. It's not the only part of
yeah,
it, but it is a big part of it. But in terms of the social pressure, I always found it like very odd because, um, like for example, okay, like a lot of times, especially with like family gatherings, sometimes like a lot of times people would like encourage you to eat poorly or whatever, or drink, etc., etc. But then at the same time, at that same table, complain about having gut issues, joint issues, complain about excess body fat, how they don't like how they look in their clothes. But yet at the same time, they're literally inviting you to do the exact same activity that's producing the
They're
symptoms that
led
they're
into
complaining
that.
about
Yeah.
at that exact table. And that's like an example of like pathology 101, you know, being completely unconscious to the level of like mental and physical pathology you're causing yourself. And you're, oh, like I always say, you're doing it to yourself, man. If you want to know the root cause of all your problems, go look in the mirror, because you're definitely doing it to yourself.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, I can see that even within my own family. So I think this is probably a common factor in a lot of individuals who are first generation or are immigrants themselves to America. Because for me, like, you know, my parents are Mexican, so it's a very high carb, very high processed diet that they eat back there. But it works in that setting and from their generation because they were out in the field being laborers. Like, we are not that society anymore. So if you continue to eat in that manner and eat that high carb diet that they were eating because they're working the fields, like, it makes sense. They need that fuel and energy. But when you're here in the US and you're kind of in this new
by
corporate
sedentary work.
type of lifestyle, that exactly, then if you continue eating that way, like, you're inevitably going to gain weight because you're not exerting the energy that was previously required of you. And like for me, like my family, like I didn't know vegetables until I was an adult. Like, vegetables was not kind of a component of any of our meals because it's not culturally. So for me, like, it was an introduction. Like, I had to learn to enjoy vegetables, and it was painful. Like, I remember like growing up and going to like my friends' houses who were American, and you know, they had vegetables, and I used to hate it. I'd be like, ew, like, why do they eat like this like healthy food? But now, like, for me, like, I understand the purpose of eating the healthy food. And I feel like for me, I have to learn to enjoy vegetables. And I feel like if that's a struggle for a lot of people, if they don't want to eat vegetables because they don't enjoy it, like, that's not something that is a lifetime preference. You can learn to enjoy things. Like, even up until like a couple of years ago, I hated tomatoes, and now I love tomatoes. You just kind of have to like incorporate it into your diet and make it more common, and learn how to cook with them to enjoy them, to be able to kind of make them overall part of what you're
Yeah, and then
eating.
going back to you know, like being social. So J- Jerry and I are like the polar opposites. He's very extroverted. I'm very introverted. For every one time he goes out and socializes, I don't socialize like 1,000 times. You know, so that's usually the ratio. But yeah, like I always say, every diet, you know, it has a place and time. You just got to know the person. You got to know the circumstance and their goal in particular. But like for example, like one thing that I found very easy to do while traveling. Um, Obviously, outside of getting an Airbnb and just cooking your meals there. But like, for example, when I went to Yellowstone last year, the closest grocery store was like way far away. You know, it was like an hour and a half or 2 hour drive one way, an hour and a half, 2 hour drive back. And it was just too inconvenient to get there. So in situations like that, especially like even going out and socializing with friends, I mean, just going like a carnivore diet could be the thing for you, because you could order still whatever you want. You're definitely not going to gain any weight off eating protein for sure. And if you want, you could even have like any kind of choice of unlimited amounts of non-starchy vegetables, because that's pretty much like 0 calories anyways. Your body typically takes like more energy to break those
Yeah.
vegetables down than it gets in return. So you can still, you know, like whatever they have in the menu, you got a steak or this or chicken, whatever, just pick whatever, and it'll still be fine, and you won't gain weight off of that. Just pick like maybe drink water instead of like alcohol or something like that. Or you can do the bank kind of philosophy that Jerry was doing. That's a good
Uh-huh.
one as well.
Well,
So
well, I mean, 100%. I mean, when I travel, like, I do that all the time. Like, for me, like, if I travel, well, one, I try to bring snacks myself, right? So I'll bring like almonds or nuts or whatever it may be. But obviously be cautious of that because they tend to be very high calorie. So it's not, and they're also not protein, they're mostly fat. But so I'll bring like protein bars too, because that's always kind of a quick, like, I personally like to work out when I travel. Like, I enjoy working out. I'm sure we'll get to like the working out aspect of this conversation in a while, but like for me, like, I actually enjoy it. So it's always a very good like pre-workout snack for me, like before I go hit the hotel gym, or if I'm in the city and there's like a better, more upgraded gym that getting access to. Like a protein bar that I brought from home is an easy snack to kind of have with me. But again, to the grocery stores, I do that too. Like I eat a lot. So again, like I burn a lot of calories, so I need to continuously be eating all the time. So I always make sure to go to the grocery store and get snacks for that purpose, or protein shakes, or protein powder to make my own protein shake, or whatever it may be. Airbnbs, hotels, most hotels, if you request the room with a fridge, they'll have that option. But there's many foods that you can get at a grocery store that, and also it saves you money. Like if you get groceries or snacks or whatever from the grocery store while you're traveling, that kind of will help you out from a financial standpoint too, because you're not having to go out and eat. And I don't know if you guys have gone out very lately, but like even a fast food, just one meal is
Hmm.
like $15. So $15 goes a
Yeah.
longer way at the grocery store than, just that one chicken sandwich
Yeah,
and
just to give
fries.
you guys an idea, an all organic 2,000 calorie diet is about, well, actually, don't know now because the prices may have gone up slightly because of the gas stuff and all that stuff. But when I wrote my second book, it was like $12.40 or something around there a day for 2,000 calorie organic diet.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned right there, just like one fast food meal is pretty much like 15 bucks. And another important thing to remember is the average American spends like to $16,000 a year on non-essential expenses like alcohol, fast food, like you mentioned, shitty
Yeah.
coffee in the morning, which is like $5 for like super shitty coffee at one of these main corporate chains. Um,
Yeah.
whatever else, getting the new iPhone.
I bring this giant water bottle everywhere with me. It's half a gallon, so I fill it up, and I fill it up twice a day. So
Cool.
I like to do at least a gallon a day. Actually, I usually have like three of these. I do more like 1.5 gallons of water, but like I travel with it, so like it's also easy. Like I'll refill it at the hotel before I head out for whatever the day's activities are, and I'll have water like all day to stay hydrated, not spending $2 to $5 on a bottle water every single time. So like for me, like I think, and I actually encourage everyone, all my friends, even to kind of get themselves like a big giant water bottle. This is a half gallon. Some people have a gallon. I'm not that extreme. I can just fill it up twice. But I think if you don't have something to keep track of what you're also hydrating yourself with, then that's kind of another component too, because staying hydrated keeps you full longer, which for me, like you'll kind of always see me, and everyone at work always like makes fun of me. They're like, "How big is that?" Because they'll see me on like a Zoom call, and I'm like, "Oh, it's a half gallon." I try to do a gallon a day,
Yeah, and
at
with those
minimum.
things too, it makes it kind of easier to measure because when you finish one, you're like, I'm half done. I got like one
Hmm.
more to go, kind of thing. Also with the gallon thing, you can kind of,
I'll go. I'll go through one of
yeah,
these just
I
in the
usually do
workout
as well. Yeah.
itself. Like, yeah, my workouts tend to be like an hour and a half to 2 hours, but I already get half a gallon done. So really, if you want to do a gallon a day, you really only have to drink 1 gallon throughout the day outside
Yeah,
of the
and a lot of
gym.
times, guys, remember like water is the most important nutrient out of all of them out there. It's like 99% of your cells or even more. It's like pretty much composed of water. So if you're dehydrated, you're not functioning properly at the cellular level, at the base foundation of who you are. And then you can't expect to optimize your health from there, from no matter what you do. And it's inexpensive. I use like a Berkey
Oh,
water system, but there are many types of filtration systems out there. I'll just recommend kind
yeah,
of staying away from at least consistently drinking out of plastic bottles or any kind of plastic containers. But what Jerry had is great. I use like a glass, basically a pickle jar for the most part. I use one of those as well. Um, Always a good choice. And then also, like
yeah.
a lot of times people are hungry simply because they're also like just dehydrated. Not that they're in the sense hungry, because
Hmm.
your brain is basically encased in its skull. It doesn't see the outside world. It just uses its five human senses to gather information and hopefully, at least for most people, increase their chances of survival. But reading certain comments on
And
YouTube
energy
baffles that philosophy.
and energy too, right? I think it was you, or I don't know, maybe I don't know. I read it somewhere that like if you drink a 8 ounces of water, 16 ounces of water right when you wake up, like it'll be the equivalent of the energy of a cup of coffee. And that's actually what I do. Like I'll bring, a cup full of water and I'll just leave it on my nightstand. So when I wake up, like, and then when I wake up, I'm thirsty. Like, and most people will go for their coffee or their tea or whatever it may be. Like for me, like I just drink the water. And like by the time that, I get up out of bed and like walk my dog, like I don't feel the need to drink coffee. Like I used to be like, wake up, coffee, walk my dog, coffee, read my emails, coffee. Like I would probably have like 4 cups of coffee before like even noon. And so now just kind of consciously trying to stay hydrated has kind of been my like placebo, well, probably not placebo effect because it really is impacting that. I don't feel the need to drink as much coffee. Like I actually don't remember the last time I refilled my coffee pods because I don't drink too much
Yeah, don't
caffeine
you always
anymore.
find it like a little comical that the people drinking the most coffee always seem to be the most haggard and tired? I'm like, dude,
Most
it's
tired?
supposed to
Yeah,
be giving
for
you
sure.
energy. Like,
For
where's the
sure.
damn energy? The ironic thing is the people that will benefit the most from coffee are the people that already have really good energy levels. If you're if you're
Yeah.
if you're shed is sleep, if you don't know how to manage your biological system, your biological organism, your body, all that coffee is doing is just running you into the ground more and more because when you're tired and you feel like shit, that's your body's way of telling you you need to stop doing what you're doing and do it differently. Your
Yeah.
body is constantly communicating with you uh, all day, most of the time through pain, and people just totally numb themselves out, especially you probably see this in the corporate world a lot. I've done corporate
Hmm.
lectures, and sometimes you get people coming up to you that are like overweight and they're on 2 or 3 different pharmaceutical drugs and their back is hurting and they have skin issues and they're like, I feel completely fine. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about, man?
Yeah. No, for sure. And even as a pre-workout, like I didn't even know this up until like recently, but I met with a nutritionist because I was trying to figure out, it came part of the meal prep service that I use. But he was like, stay away from caffeine, especially before working out. And I'm like, no, like I need it before I work out for energy. He was like, well, you think you need it for energy, but what caffeine actually does is it constricts your like blood flow, and that's how you feel that energy. But then that's kind of counterintuitive to your workout because then you're not getting the blood circulation that's required for you to really get that extra pump and really get that oxygen to your muscles and the lactic acid to your muscles to be able to have an efficient workout. So he's like, you're drinking caffeine and you think you're getting energy, but you're really counteracting the impact of your workout. So if you really want an effective workout, be rested, fully energized from eating properly, and then work out rather than chugging caffeine right beforehand because you're just going to constrict your like blood flow and it's not going to be as effective as if you didn't have that jolt of
Yeah, and the other
caffeine.
thing is that I was going to mention is that when you're chronically dehydrated and your body doesn't think it's gonna get water some way, it'll actually trick you oftentimes to think you're hungry. So it increases the chance of you actually eating
Mm-hmm.
food, which is, predominantly vegetables or fruit are, 95+% water. Meat is very high in water, like 70+% as well. So it'll actually trick your brain into thinking you're hungry so you can have an increased chance of eating that food and getting water from that food to increase your chance of survival. So a lot of times, not a lot of times, but quite a bit of times, it's like people that think they're hungry, they're really thirsty. And then also, like, another thing is people think they have to be
Mm-hmm.
starving themselves to death. I'm like, dude, Jerry and I like have to keep, like, if anything, it's way too much food just to be able to sustain our weight without the fat dropping off
Uh-huh.
way too quickly. A lot of times that's like a huge
Yeah.
thing with dieting too. I never had
No,
any of these issues with my clients. They're like, if anything, way too full while they're losing so much body fat. I don't know what the deal is
yeah.
with these diets. So
I literally have a friend who it's almost embarrassing because so he's 250 pounds, but he's a bodybuilder. And so we go out to eat and he will literally order like 3 entrees. I'm like, can you like eat before we go out so we don't look so weird because you're eating? But he's still like he looks ripped and huge because he needs it in order to maintain his mass. So I think it all is all just kind of relative to your body, what your goals are. But doing it in a healthy manner, I would never like say I think like starving yourself is probably like counterintuitive because most people who starve themselves end up binging. Like I don't know anyone who like starves themselves and actually like looks good. They're either one
mhm.
unhealthily skinny where it's a concern, or two, they're overweight because they're binging. And so for me, like I feel like binging is probably like even worse because you're probably going to eat more than you would have had you just consistently
Yeah,
been eating.
yeah. Well,
So,
what's your take on the general like corporate vibe and why a lot of people kind of lose themselves in their health? Because I notice it is a very high. I mean, I'm talking about like when I was doing corporate lectures?
I think it's excuses. I think everyone has excuses for why they don't want to. I feel like we're in a society where we like to complain when we don't get immediate results. So I think like especially physique, like I don't think you need to eat healthy or work out to look good. I think that is just an outcome. But if that is your goal, then that's not going to be a very long-term sustainable goal to have. If you just kind of make it part of your life, it'll be the output. It shouldn't be kind of like what you're trying to achieve. It should just be kind of a result out of kind of that lifestyle. Like I have a lot of people who say, I don't have time. I'm like, there's no reason, excuse me, there's no reason for you to say that you don't have time. If you have time to watch 2 hours of Housewives of Beverly Hills, then you have time to go to the gym. It's just about priorities. And like for me, like I actually look at my schedule the night before to figure out, okay, when should I plan on working out? Like if my day is gonna be back to back to back to back meetings, like, okay, should I wake up slightly earlier to go work out? Or am I gonna have the energy or time to work out afterwards? Or do I have time in between meetings to get that workout? And so I think you kind of just need to be conscious of your own schedule, because the whole I don't have time, I don't think is really a reason. I think there's some individuals who have obviously tighter schedules. Obviously, if you're a parent and you have kids, then that is probably a little bit more difficult. But there's other ways that you can get your fitness in involving your kids. Like, I mean, obviously if you have kids and you have to take care of them, rather than like just having them run around all day in the house and you just watching them and that preventing you from going to them, go to the park, let them be busy. You go do push-ups or sit-ups or whatever, bring your yoga mat and do that. Or wake up early, or wake up, or while they're getting ready to go to school, like get your push-ups and go for a walk. Like for me, I don't do cardio per se, but I have a dog. So I take her on like a 45-minute to an hour walk every day, because one, I want to tire her out, but two, like I killed two birds in one shot. So I get my cardio and I get to walk my dog. So I think you just need to figure out what your schedule is like and plan ahead. I think to be able to work out when you work in a corporate environment, depending on the type of corporate that you're in, it could be a very consistent schedule, which in that case, you shouldn't have any excuse. If you're an accountant who goes in at 8 a.m. and clocks out at 5 p.m., there's no reason why you can't go to the gym, at 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. or after work, whatever it may be. If you have a more inconsistent corporate work or schedule, then think ahead, plan ahead. Even if you think, and even like for me, like I even have backup plans, because there's times where I'm like, oh, you know what? I have like a 2-hour block that I'll just go to the gym then. But I also kind of have a backup plan, because I have the type of schedule where things get added to my calendar last minute. So for me, like, okay, if something happens and I can't make that slot that I'm originally intending to, when can I go? And so for me, like my default is always after work. But also for me, like I actually enjoy working out, and it's like the one time where I don't look at emails, I don't reply to text messages or whatever it may be. Sometimes I put my phone
What do you
on
mean
like airplane
sometimes?
mode
It
and
should be every time.
listen to
I remember I didn't even allow you, I think, to have your
yeah,
phone on us during the training sessions.
like for me, yeah. And even if I looked at emails or any, like I feel like it would stress me out, and I would like
Yeah.
not have an efficient workout. So for me, like working out, like I actually enjoy it, and it's like I call it my me time. Like I don't like to talk to anyone. I also like, I mean, some people are into like, I don't do gym buddies. Like I can't do a gym buddy, because that ends up being into like chit chatting or like whatever it may be. Like I just like to go in and out. Like for like I learned this from you. You shouldn't need more than an hour work to have an effective workout. So for me, like I like to go in, do my thing, and then get out. And so for me, like having a gym buddy just doesn't work out for me, because they either want to chit chat or then I have to wait for them. Like, yeah, sometimes there's benefits because you can like lift heavier if you have a spot, but I'm also not the type of individual who's embarrassed to ask someone at the gym. Like I'll ask them like, hey, can you spot me or whatever, because that's the other thing. I want to make sure that I'm safe when I'm lifting. And if I'm lifting heavy and if I need a spotter but I don't have a gym buddy, then I just randomly ask a person. Most people are friendly. Like people ask me all the time if I can spot them, and I for sure like 100% do it. I'm even the one who's like, hey, do you want me to like take a picture for you if it's going to be faster than, because that's the other thing that bothers the F out of me. It's all these new social media InstaFit people that bring their tripods to the gym, and literally they just take up so much time just setting up the equipment to like do like 2 reps and then look at the video and realize that they want to do it again. I'm just like, there should be like special gym for like those people because I hate them. But I going back to kind of just the corporate lifestyle thing, I think I think most people's excuse is the time thing, but I think it's more about assessing your priorities. So if you want to be fit and you want fitness to be a priority, make that a priority. Like skip the watching the TV show, or wake up slightly earlier, or figure out some time. I think it's just all about schedule management. And I think if you can schedule enough time for all these other things that are not must have, then I think the gym is probably a better investment in yourself and
Yeah, of
just kind of
course. Yeah,
long-term
well,
health.
objectively speaking, when we're looking just at straight hours, there's more to the equation than this. I mean, I think they're like 128 hours in a week. Let's say ideally, I mean, you're sleeping 8 hours a day. That's like 54 hours or something like that. Then you're working 40 hours a week. Average person, I think, works around 50 though. Let's say you're spending even 15 hours a week with your family and friends. Like you're hanging out with your friends 15 hours a week, which basically not even the most like social people do for the most part. And you're spending about
Mm-hmm.
5 hours a week, like running errands and stuff of that sort. Even with all of that, you still have 2 full days and about like 5 or 6 hours of free time every single week. And from my
Mm-hmm.
calculation, what does it take to really optimize your aesthetics and health? It takes about like 10 to 11 hours, with the workouts, presuming you're driving to the gym,
Yeah.
getting your meals, all that stuff. It takes, let's say, about like 10 hours a week. So even with all that, you still have pretty much like 1.5 days of complete free time every single week. But the real
Mm-hmm.
issue I find for most people is, they don't stop working out and eating well for no reason. They usually stop working out and eating well as a byproduct or a symptom of a disconnect of their core values, which leads to a lot of like misery in their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's also who you
That's a big one.
surround yourself with. Like for me, like all my friends are healthy. We all want to, like, we're all still young and single, and we want to look good. And so for all of us, like, we self motivate each other. Like, we'll
I'm
give
like,
each
well,
other
I'm not
props.
young and
We'll like
single, but I still want to
we'll
look good. I'm like, wait a
yeah, yeah, yeah,
minute.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. But I would probably say that like 99.9% of my friends and everyone that I hang out with and associate with, fitness and being healthy is part of their life. Like I said earlier, I probably have like a 20 personal trainer friends. So for me, like, it's not weird or odd or out of habit to be healthy because I'm surrounded by everyone who that's their lifestyle. So it's my normal. So I think you also kind of have to do that, is put yourself in an environment where, and it doesn't have to be like an extreme like myself where everyone that I'm friends with is healthy, but have the one or two friends that are, and like help each other kind of self motivate to kind of achieve those goals and make that part of a lifestyle. Because the gym and eating healthy is, it's a
Mhm.
lifelong thing. It's not like you can do it for a couple of months, you get to whatever target goal, body appearance, aesthetic, whatever it may be, goal that you have, and then you're gonna keep it. Like, this is a lifestyle. Like, it's not a temporary thing. So unless you're willing to commit to it, and sorry, this is probably not something that you want me to say, but like,
No, I
why
say that
waste
all
your
the
time
time.
on that? So like for me, like for me, like, I see individuals that I see them at the gym every single day, and they work out
It's
longer than I
depressing.
do, but but they're still unhealthy. They're still overweight. I'm just like, what are you eating at home that you still look like this, even though we have the
Yeah.
same gym lifestyles? So for me, like, I eat a lot. I'm like, are you going home and just like chugging gallons of ice cream? Like, how can you still be that
Hmm.
unhealthy if you're here at the gym? And then it kind of goes back to like, they'll go home, and because they worked out, they're like, I'm going to treat myself
Yeah.
to a cheeseburger. I'm like, well, no, that's not
Yeah.
that's not how it works. I mean, yeah, there are some individuals where there's the thyroid issue.
No
There
thyroid
may be
issues,
health
guys. For those
reasons
of you
why.
that tried that thyroid excuse with me, all it really does, if you have an underactive thyroid, is just decrease your calorie expenditure slightly. There's still so much you can do and I've had many clients with thyroid issues. Why are they all losing weight? Clearly, it's just poor programming, poor lifestyle decisions, poor nutritional
Yeah.
decisions, and a myriad of other things.
Well,
So,
what I meant, it could have been a factor that got you to that point, but if you're going to the gym and eating healthy and doing something about it, then like, like I know people who, their diabetes, the one that can go away goes away once they kind of like re-change their lifestyle. So I don't know. I feel bad sometimes 'cause I do want to ask them like, hey, like maybe I can give you some tips on like what you should be eating because you're killing it at the gym. You're doing the right things at the gym, but there must be something at home that you're not doing that doesn't allow you to achieve those goals. And even like even like the worst is like personal trainers at gyms that just look unhealthy. Like I'm baffled, and I would never pay for a personal trainer that is unhealthy themselves, because if you yourself as a personal trainer can't uphold the values and and structure that you're trying to teach your clients, like why would I want to work out with you? So for me, like when people are like, oh, like who should oh, they must know what they're doing because they're personal trainers. I'm like, no, like anyone can be a personal trainer. You can log in online and do like a little course, and then 24-hour fitness will hire you. No, sorry, 24-hour fitness.
24-hour fitness
But
actually is a little bit more stringent.
like
But to be honest, in California, you don't even need a certification. All you need is
yeah,
CPR, which takes like literally like 2 hours to pass, like a CPR cert, and personal training insurance, which is like $200 a year, and that's it. You're a personal trainer. That's literally it. That's literally it.
yeah. And so for me, like when I found you, like I purposely looked for like a trainer that looked like they actually like followed their own guidance, because there are so many out there that I'm just like, okay, like how can you even be and they also kind of teach things that are incorrect because they never really have the proper training or the proper mentorship to teach them what the right stuff is. They just see what's online. Like I've had so many like quote unquote personal trainers try to tell me, XYZ, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not how science works, but like
Yeah.
let me try to like I try to educate them like, I think this is this is the science behind it. I was like, you may have like read that or seen that on Instagram, but like that's not really like how the body
Yeah.
works. But that's just
Well,
my
it's actually
take
a
on
very
that.
accurate one. People have a huge misconception about in-person trainers being like elite information providers or very competent. It's complete opposite, like 99% of the time. Very incompetent, very unprofessional oftentimes, very
Yeah,
little certifications or any education required to get into those occupations and stuff of that sort. And one quick thing, I have to say, I've noticed this. And from a customer's perspective, I do hear a lot of people say like, hey, I wouldn't take advice from like a registered dietitian or nutritionist or like a personal coach, personal trainer or whatever that isn't fit or healthy themselves. But how many times do people take advice from like medical doctors that are very, very unhealthy and they just blindly follow their advice, I find it very odd that it's like,
yeah.
um, people have that standard for personal trainers, but then for medical doctors, they're like, well, at least he has a degree.
No, I agree. I agree. And I have a lot of friends who are in the medical field, whether they're physicians or whatever it may be, and they themselves acknowledge that nutrition is not a big focus during medical school. And I think that's why kind of a lot of medical offices or whatever are now have these like nutrition programs that doctors can refer to them, because doctors themselves aren't like very specialized. Like even like what is it called, like doctors that deliver babies, like most of them don't really like know a lot of the non-surgical aspect of delivering a baby. That's why like sometimes countries that use midwives, the baby mortality is lower than in the US, because they know more of the non-scientific Western medical approach to certain diseases. And for me, like I open myself up to non-traditional
You mean traditional?
I guess
Like,
treatments as
you
well.
mean
Like
traditional of living a healthy lifestyle and being actually healthy? That is the traditional way.
well,
All these pills and pharmaceutical shit,
the
that's the
non-Western aspect of it,
untraditional thing.
uh yeah, like for me, like instead of I, like everyone in the world, like I went to a psychiatrist or therapist for, and I think everyone should. I'm very a proponent for a therapist, but for me, like one thing that I don't like is psycho whatever medications. Like for me, they're like, oh, you have and they were trying to tell me things that I had, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, I think I went in there for, I forget what it was, and then the lady was like, oh, you have anxiety or depression, and then try to give me these medications, and I kind of started taking them, but they didn't really, like, they didn't vibe well for me. And so I'm like, someone was like, have you tried meditating? So I'm like, let me give that a try. So that's kind of, I tried these other approaches that ended up working well, where like I don't
Hmm.
really take any prescription medication unless it's like an antibiotic, because I need it, and like it's an infection, like it needs to get treated with penicillin or whatever it may be. But like for me, like I open myself and allow myself to other treatment methods that aren't considered traditional in the Western medicine way, like meditate. I do the whole cupping. I try everything. I'm not going to say that everything works. I don't, I haven't, I'm not technically equipped to
No,
state
you
that things
can,
work or
because
not,
you're actually like
but
a healthy
I do,
individual yourself. That's the biggest
but I
testament, you
do,
know?
but I
So
do,
don't discredit. Yeah,
but
don't
I do see
discredit your
results.
opinion on it.
Correct. But I do see results. Yeah. Yeah, I have an opinion, but I can't say like scientifically proven. But yeah, no, I think everyone should allow themselves to explore other options that are non-physician, comma
Yeah,
MD
I had the same
prescribed.
same issue with you. It was a long time ago, like during UCI. Um, like I had social anxiety, I probably told you this story like a million times, but I also
Hmm.
went to the doctor and they're like, oh, just take this anxiety medication. Not looking at the fact that I was, way overstudying, working out way too much, had like poor social skills that I could have at least trained myself to counter, which I ended up doing by taking improv classes, acting classes, just like hiring random coaches, et cetera, just to at least learn those skills so you don't feel as awkward in social situations, et cetera.
Hmm.
And it went away, man. It went away once I learned, like, hey, you're not supposed to be working 80-hour weeks, and you're not supposed to be this. And a lot of times, the way
Yeah.
these like psychiatrists or other MDs are practicing, just kind of throwing pills at you, giving you a quick five, they should be like ashamed of how they're practicing because they're not doing the customer
Yeah.
any justice by doing that. And in fact, I would even argue, and it's easy to prove, like they're just actually reinforcing that person's behavior because they're allowing them to keep doing what they're doing that led them to their problem of why they're there to begin with. It's kind of like having a rock inside of your shoe, and instead of that's causing you pain, and instead of taking that rock out, you take like pain
Hmm.
medication, but continue to walk with that rock inside your shoe. Now, how stupid does that sound? And that's basically how what
Hmm.
healthcare has become for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, but the one thing that I do think is great about, I feel like, what is it, starting with the millennials and kind of the younger generations, I feel like we're more receptive to non-traditional treatments, and I think that's great because I think long term it's going to be more balanced of Western and Eastern or non quote unquote traditional treatments. Because I'm not going to say that medicine should be out the way, and I'm not that type of individual. I think prescriptions are, they're there for certain things, not for other things. But I think we're moving towards a society where it's a little bit more balanced. And I'm kind of happy about that because I think the boomer generation was all very medical, because for them, like, I feel like medical breakthrough was like their generational kind of viewpoint. But I think our generation that kind of saw all the non-medical impact of the boomer generation that is now affecting us psychologically, like we're opening ourselves more to kind of non-medicated type of treatments. And I think that's great because I think we're moving towards a more balanced equilibrium of like Western and Eastern medicine. I don't want to say Eastern because it's not completely all just Eastern, but your Western versus non-Western type of treatments. So I think that's great. I think that's one benefit of kind of the younger generations, is that they're more receptive to that. And so I'm kind of looking, maybe like within my lifetime it'll be kind of a more normalized receptive thing, because that's kind of another thing too. Like, I think mental health is very important too, to go along with your physical health, because there's all these things that if your mental health is not where it should be, then you have all these hormones and chemical imbalances in your brain that can ultimately end up
Hmm.
impacting your physical health. So getting that as getting that tune up as well. So just like your body needs the gym workout and the proper food in it, I feel like your mental health also kind of requires that. It shouldn't be like you have a nervous breakdown to where you go and seek health or mental health advice. Like it should be kind of a very proactive, normalized type of scenario. And again, like I think now there's things like life coaches. There's all these not so psychiatrists are the only ones who can prescribe medication. So for me, like I try to stay away as much as possible from psychiatrists because they're like the doctors of your mental health. So for them, their answer is always going to be some sort of prescribed medication. But now there's all these other alternative mental health support, like just regular psychiatrists can't prescribe. So that's one option. A therapist, life coach. There's all these new ways that don't require medicine to treat that aspect of it. And I think once you kind of have when you're emotionally healthy, I think that will lead to kind of a physical health revolution, if that kind of makes sense. So for me, like when I'm sad, depressed, feel whatever it may be, like I don't feel motivated to go work out. I don't feel motivated to eat healthy. Like I think for a lot of people when they're depressed, they want to eat sweets, and there's all I forget the research, but there's things that like sweets, it's like a drug, like it artificially makes you feel good. But if you don't even allow yourself to get to that point where you need that craving to satisfy your mental health emotions, then like ultimately you're just going to be healthy consistently physically and won't require to like eat that pint of ice cream because you're feeling depressed because you're on antidepressants, but you eat stronger ones because you're not really getting to the root of it. So now you're eating ice cream and pizza to try to make yourself. So it's kind of a rolling, what is it called?
A cycle of pathology.
Rolling effect.
We call in a lot of the healthcare, we call that person the 401k client, because they literally never get better. So you throw them on your 401k plan because they have to keep coming back because they tackle one symptom, then another symptom comes back, then another symptom. They're just a client for life. And they always wonder why they're getting sicker and sicker. And then when you ask them, they're like, oh, my doctor is so good. He prescribes me medications right when I need it. I'm like, no, man. That's not a good sign of a doctor that puts you on more medication. A good sign of a doctor is the one that de-prescribes medications for you and gets you completely off of that shit as fast as possible. So.
No, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the few things that I take is just kind of like just the multivitamins, just general things that I probably don't even need them because I get all of those nutrients from just the food that I eat. But I mean, like for me, it's more kind of like just to make sure. But like even people who have like cabinets of supplements, I'm like, if you're really eating like the food that you should be eating, you shouldn't eat like every single like alphabet vitamin on your cabinet.
Exactly. And you kind of hinted at being emotionally happy as a ripple effect to just creating overall health, and I'm totally big believer in that. And I think honestly the biggest driver to any sort of misery, disease, whatever, is a disconnect in that core values of the individual, presuming the individual even understands or even is clear about their core values. Like you're very clear about various of your core values, and you're always learning along the way new ones, and sometimes they change, of course. But the bigger that disconnect in your core values, the more mental and physical pain the person will experience in their life. And typically they always seek out food as a form of comfort, electronics as a form of distraction. Like you check the person's history on their phone, they're telling you they don't have enough time. You check their history and they're spending 3 or 4 hours a day on social media. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have enough time,
And that's the other thing that I think is making a lot of people, it kind of creates that ripple effect, is that in social media, like for me, like I always tell people only post on social media the good stuff. So like if you're comparing yourself to other people through their social media, like you're not really getting a true representation of their true life, because they're not posting, their lows, they're just posting their highs. And then also from, a physique standpoint, if you're comparing yourself to like, that person who has, 1 trillion followers and is like ripped, well, like that is their job. Like they are at the gym like for hours. Like for me and my lifestyle, like I know that I won't ever be able to achieve.
You're not going to be abusing anabolics.
It's not my job. I don't.
That's literally probably the only thing separating you from them, is they're willing to abuse anabolics and then spread that message to the youth, unfortunately, and you're not, So.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, like I think if you're comparing yourself, I think social media has kind of like made that even worse, because they make it seem like it's easy. Like, you have those guys or girls who are like, I'm just gonna do like these weird push-ups and you'll get like, the best like chest of your life. I'm like, no, just stick to the regular push-ups. That'll work. Like, you don't need to do all these like crazy fancy things that they're doing for the likes and the follows. But most of the time, like, one, they're like unsafe, or two, like they're not really practical, or three, like you can do it more efficiently and easier way. So I think social media has kind of added to the pressure to look a certain unrealistic way. And so one, most of those people are on some sort of like steroid or additional whatever it may be. But two, like they're also at the gym a lot longer than most of us have time to. Like for them, that's their income. Like, their job is to have
I'm
followers
telling
and
you, Jerry,
likes.
they're not at the
And so
gym
they
longer.
are at the gym.
They're literally just like most of them are literally just abusing anabolics. That's literally it. They're not
Yeah.
working out any special than you. They don't have any great, trust me, they definitely either at the same level of work ethic
I,
as you, but
no,
it's not
for
going to be
sure.
better,
For sure. And also too, like, if you see them in person, one, they don't look like that because most of them use that audit, like, because I have friends who are social media influencers or whatever it may be, uh, but they won't post a picture without like editing, like hyper editing it to make look good. Even like group pictures, they all select, like, literally, I have seen them, like it'll be like a group picture of 10 guys, and they all have to pick the picture that they're going to post. So they all post the same picture, and then they will all edit it together and then approve what actually gets posted on there. So what you see on social media from these like InstaFit social media influencers or whatever it be, like, it's not their real body. It's not what they really look like in person. And going back to like the steroids, like they have terrible skin. Like their back is full of like acne. Like they have like terrible like varicose veins or whatever they're called. Um, so in reality, they don't really look that way. So I always think it's funny because I'm like, if they ever go missing, like they'll never be able to find them because they won't have a picture that actually looks like what they look like in real
Yeah.
life.
And there are good channels that are kind of exposing the scammers out there that unfortunately, I don't know, I forgot the names of them. There are a few channels, that expose like, who's lying. And then unfortunately they sell these programs kind of to the naive person. They don't know, so
Yeah.
they buy these programs thinking they're going to look like these people, and it's kind of super
Oh yeah, the ones
bogus
that say
and they're
like,
not.
yeah,
And it's like, first of all, like you can't even, unless you're already like very knowledgeable, there's not much a pre-made program can do for you anyways.
yeah,
You have to have that one-on-one kind of elite coaching to really get you to set that foundation right. And then once you're very knowledgeable, you can probably buy
yeah.
those programs and then know what to use and not use and still have good results. But before that, if you just get like an average corporate worker that's buying these pre-made programs, dude, what happened to the 2 to 3 hour
Yeah.
assessment that needs to go into even knowing what this person needs? It doesn't happen. So obviously they don't see results at all.
And I think that's what differentiates your type of training versus those type of trainings, is that yours is a little bit more personalized to the individual and what their needs and goals are, and also kind of what type of potential injuries they might have. Because those online programs, like, they're actually not your coach or your trainer, like especially the very big ones with like millions and thousands of followers or millions of followers. Like, they actually have a team of people where like their people aren't even fit. Their job is just to kind of like email out programs. Like, the person is just the face for the account, but they're not actually like coaching or training you the way that you do with your clients. Like, they've just gotten to the point where like they just have like minions who like just shoot out these programs, and like they're not actually like getting that true trainer experience, because the trainer
Hmm.
is not really training you. It's just like someone they hired who, because now you can do it via, everything is just online now. Like, you don't see them in person. So it's not really them that you're working with. You're just kind of working with someone that they hired to kind of reply back to
Yeah, and like a
emails.
quick check and balance for those looking to reach out to coaching. I mean, look, the first time going around with a coach, I mean, if they're not offering, like a 2 or 3 hour assessment upon first meeting you, that's already like a massive, massive red flag. And I would recommend definitely running the other way and finding someone more competent or someone that has a business system that's more conducive to the client's well-being than instead of the practitioner's pocket. Um, of course, there's so much more that goes into that, but just right there, I mean, that assessment has to happen, especially with today's average citizen, which is like full of different pathologies that have to be taken into consideration before even like starting a training program and stuff of that sort. If they're like, if you're showing up and they're just having you sign a quick waiver and then bam, you get into that class and you're doing deadlifts and snatches and running around in circles and like a group full of 20 people, that's another huge red flag.
Yeah. And going back to your 401k
Or BMW fund
comment,
client,
like
that's another name.
actually most of, yeah. So another thing for like good trainers is good trainers actually fire their clients. So you know, I have friends that, you know, they'll be like, oh, I had to fire a client today, and they fire their clients because if their clients are not putting in the work that they're asking them to, they're like, this is my brand, this is my representation. You're not paying me to like chit chat with you during our workouts. Like I need you to like actually work out. I need you to go home and do what I told you to do. And if you're not doing it, like my friends that are personal trainers fire the clients that aren't really committed to the program that they're trying to deliver. And so like if you're working out with a trainer and all you do is chit chat, and I see this all the time at the gym. I'm like, dude, like you're paying like 72, sometimes $150 an hour.
Rent a friend. That's what they're referred to.
Like, like I'm like I like it baffled. Like I would be like, what's next? What's next? Like what's the next workout? Like so I can like start mentally preparing for that next workout. Like I wouldn't want to just like sometimes I'll just sit on an equipment for like 20 minutes just like talking. I'm like, you're literally just throwing burning dollars
that's
in front of me.
Rent a friend, personal trainer. That's the phrase, you know. You're paying them to literally pretend to be your friend for an hour and count your reps. And you're paying like 100 or 100, like you mentioned, especially in your area. I mean, you could get probably 150 is probably maybe the average price, you know, and stuff of that sort.
No,
and then another huge red flag. I mean, dude, there has to be like a program that's provided to the client that streamlines the entire process for what they need to do Monday through Sunday on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. This must happen. If you're not getting that, if you're showing up and the coach is like, oh, what do you want to train today? Oh, what did we train last week? Oh, let me think. Maybe we trained like legs last week. What do you want to train today? Or they're not providing you, or they're keeping like little notes like I'm doing right now just during our chat, or like you mentioned, they're just kind of like a rent-a-friend and chatting with you. Dude, you don't have a coach. You literally have a rent-a-friend, and you're paying that person to be your friend, and that's it. And if that's what you want, then that's totally cool. But that is what you have to acknowledge.
And then also asking you like what injuries you have that day, because you know there's times where like oh man, like I slept weird and like my back is funky. Like if they're not proactively asking you like how you're feeling that day, and then be able to modify things based on the like if they walked in there with a preset, this is what we're gonna do, but like hey, like maybe something is going on with your body that day that limits you from doing that. Like they should be able to accommodate or adjust or whatever it may be to make sure that however you're feeling that day doesn't get any worse if you have any type of injury, because that happens all the time. Like I'll fall asleep on the couch and I wake up and my neck is like messed up. So clearly I'm not going to be doing any type of like workouts that involve kind of neck rotation or whatever it may be. But
Got it.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm curious, have you ever been confused by the labels in the grocery store? In Yevgeny's book, he demystifies the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. He also covers how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and other related topics. It's a beautifully illustrated, non-technical read that comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning materials. Jump on Amazon and check out the book titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Eugene Trufkin. Now let's dive back into the podcast.
Well, what else? How are you doing with remote work, by the way? I'm always encouraging my clients to go remote because it's I feel like it saves so much time, and it gives that person that extra like 10-hour window, like I mentioned, that you really need to optimize your mental and physical health.
I mean, I love it. I love it from the time that I've reclaimed back. Like now that I think about it, so I used to only commute like 10 miles to work. It was just 10 miles, which you would think should take
San Diego, LA, 3 hours.
But no,
you know?
No, it would minimum take like 45 minutes on a good day. And then like, you know, if it's because you know, California, if it's raining, like it's an automatic like an hour and a half. or if it's a holiday week, and like there's all these factors where like I was probably averaging out maybe like an hour to an hour and 15 minutes each way. So like now working from home, like I have like 2 to 2.5 of extra hours to
Hmm.
do things. And so like even now work people who work remote and can get a workout, and I'm like, well, you're not spending time on the road, so like why don't you use that
Excuse maker,
as a form
you
of.
know.
But like for me, like it's easy for me to stay active working from home because I have a dog. And so I'll have to go on walks, I'll go on jogs. So she's a cattle dog German Shepherd, highly active. So for me, like that's helpful to like get up and be active in a work from home environment, because you could kind of get into a cycle of just kind of being lazy at home and kind of like just any breaks in between work, just laying down on the couch and watching TV. So like for me, like I'll work on projects, I'll like do yard work or whatever it may be, things that are active during my work load times. So I think that's kind of been a benefit of working from home. But I think we were talking about it yesterday, is just those boundaries are a little bit blurred sometimes working from home, because there's not the everyone gets there at 8 into the office and leaves by 5. And so like when you work in an office like that, 8 to 5 is very much respected, because once you leave at 5, like people know that you're on the road or you're gonna go to your family, and they don't bother you. I think when you work from home, like that boundary is a little bit blurred, because there is no clocking out or like that feeling of the day is over. So I think you do need to establish those boundaries. And like I mentioned to you earlier, or when we were chatting the other day, like for me, like I actually quit my last job because that
Exactly.
wasn't being respected. I was getting pinged at all times of the day, and that's the other thing for me is I need to be happy where I work, because if I'm not happy working, like you're doing this more than you're
Hmm.
doing anything else. If you're working 40 hours a week, that's more than you're doing anything else. So you need to enjoy it. So for me, like I actually took a very significant pay cut to move to an organization where I can have that time, because for me, my time and my mental health and my that those are things that are more important to me now. So I mean, obviously, some people are a little bit more limited. Like for me, like I don't have a lot of financial commitments. Like I don't have family and kids. So like for me, like if I wanted to, like I can just say like screw everyone, and I'm gonna pack my things up and pull a Eugene and go to the middle of nowhere and just not do anything for a while. But like for me, like I have different priorities where like for me, like climbing up the ladder is no longer the priority. And if it and one of the things too that I've been kind of telling people is that my after COVID kind of shifted the way that I thought about what some of my priorities were. Like when all these people died, like all these people who lived such unhealthy, unhappy lives just kind of died, and it was for nothing. Like for me, like it was a wake up call. Like that's why literally like after COVID, like I quit my job. I was like, this is not worth it. I was like, what if another pandemic happens next year or the following year and wipes us all out? Like I want to make sure that this life that I'm living today, I'm enjoying, I'm healthy, I'm happy, because it's pointless doing something, a job that you're doing the most of, and not enjoying it, not being happy, that ends up being kind of another
Hmm.
snowfall to the eating unhealthy or like the whatever may be. So I don't know. I have I think I'm lucky that I have the liberty to do that. But I think for those others that are out there that can do that, like why not? What's keeping you from making that move to something that's more conducive to a happier,
Yeah, and
healthier
also regarding
lifestyle?
your comment, I hear this often with people that have kids, but I think it's total BS. Um, Remember, kids always go off of what they see you doing, oftentimes not what they say you're doing. So if you're a parent and you're coming home
Hmm.
tired, overweight, sick, full of disease, not present as your fullest self, not setting healthy boundaries at work, you're communicating this to your kid that it's okay to do that and it's okay to live that way. And guess what? They're going to be the exact same way. And if you're miserable and
Hmm.
full of obesity and disease, well, your kid's going to be miserable and full of obesity. How happy is that going to
Hmm.
make you seeing your kid following that same exact proven path that it's just going to lead to full of like misery? The funny thing is a lot of people seek out these jobs for the biological safety. They kind of like, well, um, I have this core value, but the outside world isn't going to respect me for this core value or appreciate me in the sense that I'm not going to be able to make a living. Let's say I want to be an artist. Well, I'm not going to be able to make a living for an artist, for
Mm-hmm.
example, because the person thinks maybe they don't have the business skills or even the skill, and people want to appreciate their art or whatever. So they're like, well, I'm going to get whatever mainstream job ABC. It could be whatever that is, let's
Yeah.
say like a lawyer, corporate job, a warehouse guy. Of course, it's not aligned with your core values, but hey, at least I'll get a paycheck and I'll be physically safe. My biological being will be safe. I'll have the money to have a house
Mm-hmm.
and also food, et cetera, et cetera. So I won't be like physically or biologically at risk. But the problem is that then creates like
Yeah.
an insidious cycle, that disconnect of the core
Mm-hmm.
values for the first 2, 3, 4 years might be okay. But then in the back of your head, you're being fake to yourself, and then you grow disgruntled to your work, to your
Yeah.
coworkers. It becomes a stressful environment. That insidious low-grade chronic stress is extremely detrimental to your central nervous system, immune
Yeah.
system. That causes a cascade of health problems, which lead to also mental issues as well, which once again through neuroplasticity lead to physical issues. And all of a sudden you lost that biological safety you're seeking to begin with, which explains, 9 out of 10 Americans are metabolically unhealthy now, and it doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Buy some short-term relief maybe, and maybe if you use it kind of like with the thought of like using it as a springboard to get to the next stage, but if you nest there, you will run into a life full of obesity, misery, and disease, and there's no ifs or buts about it. It's guaranteed to happen.
Yeah, no, like for me, like I always like people when people ask. So I work in corporate finance, and people are like, "Oh, do you want to be a CFO?" And I'm like, "Hell no, I don't want to." Sorry, I don't know
No,
if
you
I'm
can
allowed
say,
to curse
hey,
on
it's not
your
a Disney
channel. I'm
channel,
like, no, I don't.
you know.
I'm like, no. I'm like, no, I don't want. Like, I'm like, no, I don't want to be a CFO. Like, I look at my CFOs that I work for, and I'm like, their life looks terrible, miserable. Like, they're never home. They never get to see their family. Like, yeah, they're making $500,000 a year, but like they're not enjoying that $500,000. And so for me, like, I'm just like, if I stay in the corporate, like, I'll just be like right below the CFO where like I could make decent amount of money, but like also not have the responsibilities and terrible lifestyle that they do. Because what's the point of making all this money if
Exactly.
you're not really enjoying it? And so for me, like, I reprioritize. I kind of when I feel like in my 20s, I had a very defined view of what I wanted my lifestyle and my career path to look like. And it was very much the American dream type of lifestyle. But I've kind of reprioritized kind of what I find valuable in life. And so for me, like owning a home is not something that I find valuable. And so for me, like I rather spend my money on experiences. So do I own a home today? No. But have I traveled the world? Yes. And so for me, like that's more important than some of the physical things, like even like shopping or clothes or whatever it may be. Like for me, like I not that I copied who is it, the Steve Jobs or whatever, but like most of my clothes is like just plain. I don't do any logos because then that way like I don't have to like worry about like, oh, is that a Gucci or is that a whatever. Like I'm just like, no, this is just like a t-shirt that I bought 3 years ago from like H&M or whatever it may be. So like for me, like I don't spend money on physical things. Like I don't need to, that's the other thing. Like I don't feel the need to impress anyone else with physical things because most of the time my friends that have, the designer, whatever, like they get jealous that I get to just like up and like go for like a week somewhere. Like if you follow me on social media, like I'm always traveling. Like that was the one thing that sucked about COVID is that, that kind of limited to me. But like I was always on a plane. Like for me, like I always also look for jobs that have unlimited PTO or
What's
flexible
PTO?
PTO
Pay
because
time off, right?
that will
Pay
allow
time
me
off.
to,
Okay. Got to
huh?
remember, man,
Pay time
never
off.
been a
Yeah.
corporate. I don't know
Yeah.
all these logos or
Yeah.
lingos.
So, a lot of companies are now doing the unlimited, which that's another kind of like you have to be careful with that because a lot of people when they work in companies that do unlimited paid time off, um, they actually take less time off because they don't have that feeling of entitlement that they earned their 2 weeks. So actually most companies are shifting to that model because their employees actually take less time off because when you let's say you work at a company where you get 2 weeks off, like you feel like you earn those 2 weeks off, so you actually take them off. But like when you work in an unlimited paid time off type of company, like you feel guilty, like, oh, am I taking more time off than my coworker? Is it going to look bad that I'm, you know, requesting more than, you know, my coworker? Is that going to prevent me from like getting the promotion or whatever? Like for me, like I'm like, you know what, whatever. You said it's unlimited. I'm going to take as much as I need. As long as I'm
Yeah.
getting the work done, there's no reason why you should have any
Yeah,
issue
and the
with it.
other cool thing about like working remote and in terms of your house thing, if you can work remote, you can go wherever, you know, just move to a cheaper state, like a rich area in that cheaper state. And I guarantee you it'll be way cheaper than San Diego still, and probably even nicer in terms of quality that you're going to get for your money. Or even like
Oh
I
yeah.
met like when I was in India for a while, way back in the day, I met like a retired US firefighter guy that was living off of there just with his pension. And I mean, $3,000 or $4,000 like US
Hmm.
USD in India per month. That's like super crazy money. You know, that's, I don't know what the equivalent it is
Hmm.
these days, but
No, no, for sure. Like I know I'm actually looking at Texas right now as an option. Not where you're in no, you're
between San
San
Antonio and
Antonio.
Austin,
Okay, I'm looking more in the Houston area, just because I have friends there. But that's
gotta
still
watch out for
cheaper
the
than
tornadoes.
California. But I get, yeah, working remote. Like I don't mind bringing my laptop and like checking my emails randomly when I'm on vacation. Like if I know that I can't take 3 weeks off, but I want to have 3 weeks off, like I
Yeah.
working remote allows me to do that because I'll just bring my laptop. Especially like, you know, depending on where you are, the time difference will help you. Like if you're in a country where you're like ahead, or you know, if you're in the East Coast, like I'm West Coast. If I'm in the East Coast,
You can be
like I
like a
have a
time
three
clock,
hour
you know?
like head start on everyone else. Yeah. So like for me, like I'll get up early, do all my work, and then like enjoy whatever I'm trying to enjoy out there. So that that's definitely a benefit of working remote, is that when I know that I can't take a very extensive period of time off because I just have a
Mhm.
lot of actual work that needs to get done, like I'll still go on that trip, but I'll just work a little bit you know, on hours where I'm not doing
Yeah.
whatever I'm
Yeah,
vacationing
like I'm going to
to
go
do.
visit my parents for 2 weeks,
But
starting on Sunday. And well, I only work only like 2 days a week, so it's a little bit easier for me. But like, I'm still going to take my calls, you know, client calls on Tuesdays and stuff of that sort. But I can still, you know, hang out with the parents and go over there. I don't have to be like locked down.
yeah.
That's another huge advantage. And honestly, I think one of the biggest advantages of remote work, not only that time difference you get, you know, that extra, I mean, it varies. I had one client that I interviewed at one point. He was driving 3 hours one direction and 3 hours back every
Yeah.
day. I'm like, that is crazy,
That
dude.
and that you know, that's
That
actually
would make
more
you hate
common
your
than you would
job, even
think,
if you liked
because
it
a lot of
initially. Just that drive is ridiculous, dude.
and and it sucks, and I think a lot of it is from individuals who have families and unfortunately can't afford to live where they work, because a lot
Got to
of the
go
high
remote then,
paying
man.
jobs also tend to be in very high and very
Hmm.
high cost of living areas. So I actually I know a lot of people who commute even longer than 3 hours, and I'm like, dude, like you're literally on the car all day. You basically just go home to
Yeah.
like sleep and shower, but that's kind of their reality. So no, yeah, I mean, I'm all for working remote. Like, I don't think I will ever be able to go back to 100% office. Like I said, a lot of companies are doing hybrid where they do have an office that you can go into when you want to go into it, and I think that's great because there's times where it's just it's more efficient, especially like if your type of job is like a team oriented type of job. Yeah, sometimes it's just easier to go into the office and get it done rather than trying to like zoom and like, hey, I can't hear you, or you're on mute, or blah blah, or someone has bad connection. Like that's like literally like if there's a quote of 2020 is like you're on mute. Like that's like the running joke of like everyone's like you're on mute. So yeah, so I think there are some benefits to in office work, but I think I think we should just kind of move to more of like a hybrid. A lot of companies are doing hybrid where they have an office. So if you want to go in, like you can go in and get work done. But otherwise, like I think it's called remote first. Like they call it remote first, where working remote is like the first priority. But if you want to go into the
Yeah.
office, you do have
Well,
the
I was going to
space
say, at
for it.
least what I heard from a lot of my clients, and I kind of feel the same way. I think one of the biggest advantages of remote work is not having to deal with those little intricate social politics of in-person work. You know, the different personalities, the little political games here and there, you know, stuff of that sort, because that could be draining and extremely taxing on your health as well. I mean, most complaints I get from office workers is one, um, they don't feel appreciated. You know, they're just like another number and they could be let go any day and they're kind of, throwing a lot of work. And two, social politics. Like, I don't think anyone genuinely likes dealing with that either. And three is kind of like an overbearing or kind of like a boss that doesn't understand like nonviolent forms of communication, you know what I mean, and stuff of that sort. So I mean,
Yeah.
that could be, for the most part, all of those can be like greatly mitigated, if not almost eliminated, by going remote. I've noticed. So
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, I'm all for remote work. I don't think I'll ever go back to like a 100% office environment. Like I will do a hybrid, but I don't think I'll do 100%. And even like, the current job that I have now, when they offered me the role, we were negotiating the compensation, and the role was originally intended for me to move back to LA. And I was like, well, the cost of living in LA, specifically Santa Monica, the office was in Santa Monica. This is a tech company, and Santa Monica is now kind of they call it like Silicon Beach. A lot of tech companies are up there. But I was like, well, if you want me to move up there, like I need some sort of cost of living adjustment to what I'm currently making now. Like if I'm making this now, this is my lifestyle. If you want me to move to LA, well, I'm going to move to Santa Monica because I'm not commuting more than like 10
even that
minutes to
might still
work.
land you 40 minutes to work, man.
And so you're,
It still might take you 40 minutes to get to work. Santa
yeah, yeah.
Monica's packed,
Well,
man.
exactly. Exactly. But I'm like, and Santa Monica, San Diego, Santa Monica's the cost of living is up here. And that's what really like that actually like changed their mind. They're like, you know what? Actually, I think what you do, you can do remote. And so like sometimes like don't be afraid to kind of like have those conversations. Because for me, like I was very adamant. I was like, I am not leaving San Diego. Like I like San Diego. I like my kind of environment now. If you want me to move to LA, pay me LA dollars. If not, like I'll work remote. I can do what I was doing in my last company for 2.5 years. So if I did it in my last company, I can do it here. So I ended up like convincing them to like allow me to work remote, mostly because they
Yeah.
didn't want to pay me what I would have wanted them to pay me because Santa
And it
Monica is
goes
so
back to you're just
expensive.
clear on your core values, and you're willing to stand up for it. And guys, it's like so important to do that. Trust me, if you don't do that, you will have a life full of obesity, misery, and disease. First goal is to identify and be crystal clear about your
Yeah.
core values. Second goal is don't allow the world to change who you are. That's the main thing. The more you allow the world to
Mhm.
change who you are, if you prostitute yourself out for money and stuff of that sort,
Yeah.
you will have a life full of obesity, misery, and
And
disease. There's no question about it.
I'm very vocal. Like no one no one can shut me up. Like I it doesn't matter who you are, what your rank is. You can be, the president of the United States, and I will still like give you your truths if there's something that I'm not vibing with. But like for me, like even at my last company that I was working terrible hours, like when I had to set those boundaries, like I told my boss, who was the CFO, I was like, hey, can you please not schedule any meetings before 8 a.m. And I was like, she's like, why? Like you always, and she asked me, she's like, you seem to be like up before 8 a.m. And I'm like, I understand that, but like if we were in an office environment, would you schedule a meeting before 8 a.m.? Probably not, because no one gets into the office at 8 a.m. So why don't you respect that when I'm at home? Like if you see me online, like maybe I'm checking emails or maybe I'm doing other non-work related things. So like for me, like I told her right away, and she like and at first she was like taken aback, but then like she actually respected the fact that I set that boundary. And even when I quit, I actually had the conversation, and I'm not telling everyone to do this. I just happened to have a really good relationship with my prior CFO, where I told her, I was like, hey, it's been 2.5 years of, these 60 to 70 hour weeks working on the weekends. I was like, I just can't do it anymore. And so like we had a conversation. We're like, and she told me, she's like, you know what? I understand that. And unfortunately, like this company, the way that it was, like you won't be able to have better hours. And so we mutually agreed that that role for me would not be a long-term role. And so she just told me, she's like, just whenever you find a job, just give me a 6-week notice. So for me, like me and her were on the same page where that job no longer was conducive to my lifestyle and my health. So I started that job at the January 2020. So then COVID happened, lockdown happened. And so working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week wasn't a big issue because there was really nothing else to do, right?
Hey, I
Everyone
was
was
out
like
in the
bored out of
forest,
their
man,
mind,
living life
locked
to the
down. So it
fullest.
made sense. Yeah. But then when the world started to open up, like I'm like, hey, like I'm I'm still young, I'm still social, like I still want to go on vac. Like I cashed out 240 hours of PTO because I didn't take a single day off in those 2.5 years, because even when I did try to take time off, they would ping me and I would have to get things done.
That's why
And
I have my
so
phone off at all
for
times.
me, when the world
And
started
I
to,
only turn it on
yeah,
occasionally
so
during the day, you know.
so when the yeah so when the world started to open up again, like I was very unhappy because now my friends were starting to hang out and do things, and I couldn't. Like literally on my birthday, on a Sunday, I had to jump on a board meeting. I tried to get, like, I'm like, it's my birthday, and they're like, sorry, like this is the only other time that higher people than me have availability. So I, as the lowest on the totem pole, had to accommodate to them. Uh, and so I think that was my, so that was December 5th of 2021. That was kind of my, like, okay, so very not too long ago. I was like, you know what, like this is not realistic for me. Like I don't want this life. I'm very unhappy. So my birthday was December 5th, 2021, on a Sunday. That Monday, like I was like, I'm gonna look for a new job. And I told her, when I had that conversation with my boss, I was like, you know what, like I don't think I can do this very long. Like, do you think things are going to get better? And she's like, I don't think things are going to get better anytime soon. And so I was like, well, you know, if that's the case, then I don't think this is the job for me. And so she was very receptive to it. I think, you know, you kind of have to have this communication with whoever you're working with, obviously assess the type of energy and relationship that you have. But luckily, like I was in a situation where I could tell her that. And so I was able to find like a job like a week later, because obviously if anyone's looking for a job right now, everyone is hiring. Um, so I just did what she told me. I gave her 6 week notice. She's very happy. You know, we still actually have very good communication. And now I'm in a situation where, you know, it's a Friday and I get to take, you know, time off to like join this chat and have this conversation with you, where I would not have been able to do that at my last
Yeah, and
job.
always be respectful, you know. At the end of the day, even if your job, you perceived your job as treating you like unfairly or something like that, it's actually a good thing because they showed you what you don't want in life. And as Walensky would say, it's like you find out like who you're not by first finding, or you find out who you are by first finding out who you are not. So thank this job, you know, thank that last relationship that didn't
Mm-hmm.
work out, because they showed you like what you don't want in the future, so you can be more
And
crystal clear and more kind of strategic about going into that next path in life, and not be,
yeah.
you know, like in your 20s your interests are like so broad, but then in your 30s it gets
Mm-hmm.
simply because of that. You have to like thank these people, like, oh, you know, thank you for showing me that I don't want to be working 60 or 70 hours. So when I go to this new job, I'm going to make sure to write it down in my journal. So when they tempt me with more money, I'm not going to fall for it again, because I don't want to be repeating mistakes my
Mm-hmm.
whole entire life, which is so sad to see with a lot of people. Because like, for
I
example,
think,
with corporate
yeah.
work and some of my clients, in the past, sometimes they would come in, they would already be super exhausted. We would get them back to health, and then they would go on their own, you know, and 2 or 3 years goes by, they don't leave that environment, which is that environment that led to all those issues, which is a huge red flag. They even make it worse. They take that promotion, which shoots everything in, which amplifies all of the issues they're already having. And then, you know, 4 years later, they're sicker and
Yeah.
more obese than ever before. And they're like, oh, what happened? I don't know what happened. I'm like, dude, come on.
Yeah. So, so going back to the comment, so actually, you know, the one thing, fun fact. So, I think the statistics is 95% of anyone who takes a counteroffer will leave within a year, because the reason why you wanted to leave a company in the first place is not the financial aspect; it was something else. So, if you're leaving a company because, you know, they're not giving you enough, or some other reason, and you find another job and they try to give you another counter with more money and that's enticing, like you may kind of want to reassess whether or not that's a good idea, because most people, it's not the money. You're still going to remain unhappy and you're going to want to go back and look for another job. So like for me, like counter offers, I'm always like, no. But I think what everyone always forgets is that when you go on a job interview, it's not just them
Hmm.
interviewing you for the role. You should also
Yeah.
be interviewing them to figure out if that's who you want to work for. Do they have the same values that you strive to have in a work environment? Is the person who you were reporting to someone that you're going to have a good relationship with, that you're going to work well with? So for me, like I have actually, after I got off of an interview, like I'll email them and I thank them for their time, but I actually reject them where I'm like, you know what, I think I'm gonna explore other options. This wasn't the right fit for me. So I feel like nowadays, especially in today's environment where employees have kind of reclaimed that power, obviously a lot of companies right now are struggling to hire employees because after COVID, everyone is just trying to find for all the companies are fighting for the talent. So the employees have kind of reclaimed that authority of like, hey, it's not just a one-way street, it's a two-way street. And so for me, like I always interview other people. And so for me, even when I'm hiring people, I actually tell them the worst things about the job. And so when you're interviewing, they're not telling you what's bad about the job or what's terrible about the job or what people complain about. Ask them. I always ask them, the last question that I always ask during an interview process, because they always ask you, do you have any more questions at the very end? I actually always ask them, if you were to give me an offer, why should I say no to it? Like, I want to understand from them what's so bad about the company that someone getting offered a job shouldn't take it. And that's really when you get to know, like, okay, what am I really getting myself into? Because you really don't know until you actually start the job. So ask those questions, ask those ugly questions, like make them feel uncomfortable. And if that's the reason why they don't hire you, then that's probably not the company that you want to work with
Yeah.
anyways.
So, um, true. I wanted to say something to kind of moreover enforce your point. Yeah. So here, look, you guys, I see this all the time. And even had a few people reach out to my group. Oh, you don't talk that much. You don't really talk that much about like working out and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, that's the least of your freaking worries. All the stuff that Jerry said right now, that's the gold. You need to master that as setting the foundation to actually being able to, if you don't master the stuff, all the stuff that Jerry went over, plus even more, dude, it doesn't matter what kind of workout program you're going to get on, what kind of nutrition program you're going to get on. Trust me, the best it's going to do for you is short-term BS and just kind of demoralize you long-term because you're going to find yourself always regaining your weight, all that. This stuff is the stuff you need to focus on if you want lasting change. And I would argue, like, if you don't
Yeah.
master this stuff, dude, you're gonna be suffering your whole life. I don't even care what kind of template programs you buy, how many CrossFit classes you do, how many bullshit
Yeah.
boot camp classes you do. You will not be doing well. And just because you lost weight, that doesn't mean anything. That literally doesn't mean anything. It doesn't say anything
Yeah.
either, because that's the easiest part of the journey.
Weight to me is so irrelative. Like, I hate when people ask me how much do you weigh, because I literally tell them, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I maybe weigh myself 2, 3 times a year, because for me, like, my measure of fitness is like, how do I look in the mirror and how do I feel? Like, right? Like, if I look good in the mirror, then that's good enough for me, because that's kind of what I'm like. For me, like, weight is such, like, I can weigh 180 and look really good, but I can also weigh
Yeah.
180 and not look very good. So for me, like, weight is just so irrelative that I feel like we put so much pressure on the weight. And don't get me wrong, there, especially at the very beginning of fitness journeys, is very good to track your weight, because that is a very good way to track, your progression. But after some time, like, really, weight becomes irrelative, because now you're talking about, muscle versus fat density. So for me, like, depending on where you are on your stage, or maybe you're prepping for a competition. Yeah, then obviously if you're prepping for a competition, then tracking your weight, tracking your macros, all that stuff is very important. But for us normal people, where like fitness is not our career and we just want to be healthy and look good, I think just simplicity is really important. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't track every single macro. Like, just if you eat healthy, like, you won't need to have to do those extreme things of tracking every single KPI out there to get results. Just, it's very basic. Just eat healthy, be active, and the output will naturally just be that way. Like, we're instinctively, like, evolved to be like, you know, hunters and gatherers. So we're naturally like, our bodies are made to be that way. It's just now we have all these processed foods and sugars that are not what our bodies are accustomed to, that have led to where we are as a society from an unhealthy and obesity standpoint. But just kind of going back to the basics. I mean, that's why, you know, I hate the whole like, you know, keto or the, what do they call it? Like caveman or all those diets, like the fad diets are not, I mean, the foundation of that is just kind of going back to the evolution of where we came from and what our body evolved to digest and process from that standpoint. So like those, if you're paying for any type of guidance in regards to that, like you really are just paying for like a history book. Just go back and read what the Australopithecus or Homo sapiens were like
Yeah,
eating, and you'll
almost
be
like
fine.
literally like 99% of the time when someone says they're on some kind of fad diet, whether it's keto, fasting, paleo, whatever, it almost tells me like they failed. They're either going to fail or they're
Yeah.
already failed or something like that, because unfortunately they're looking for just what they've probably been doing forever, looking for a simple solution for a complicated problem. And most oftentimes they just don't
Yeah.
want to do
And
any of the stuff you just listed, any of that stuff. You know, they don't want to set
mhm,
healthy boundaries with their boss, or they don't want to even work at identifying their core
mhm,
values. They don't want to set up a more conducive work environment. Most often just because of self-esteem issues. You know, they think it's impossible for them to do that. And I'm sure at one point you thought it was also like, oh, I can't talk back to my boss, you know, like what if I get fired or something like that, especially on the younger years. I know when I was finishing I know when I
mhm.
was finishing
100%.
UCI and I was telling my friends that, hey, I'm not going to go the corporate route because I just want to work 3 days a week and I'm going to be doing the personal training thing. People were like, oh, what do you mean? You know, that's not how life is. You know what I mean? Especially it was during that whole back end of the mortgage collapse thing too, you know? And
Uh-huh.
they're like, no, don't do this. And in the back of my head, I'm like, well, maybe I am wrong. Maybe they do know something I don't know, because because a lot of them are pretty smart. Why would they all be going in that direction? And I'm going in a different direction. But I'm really
Yeah,
glad I stuck it out and stuck to my core values, mainly because of how my grandma raised me on that off-grid farm with those principles in mind.
I think
But
so.
if I didn't have
I,
that reference
well,
point, I would be like totally screwed for a long time.
for sure. And I think when you enjoy doing something and you're passionate about it, it doesn't matter what it is, you'll find a way
Yeah.
to monetize on it. And so I would say the corporate route is a very safe route to go, but I think if you're passionate and really enjoy doing something, you'll figure out how to make money from it and how to like live that life that fulfills you both from a financial standpoint and a non-financial standpoint. Because even like fitness people, like most of my friends make a lot more money than I do because fitness has now become a thing. And, you know, obviously with social media, that has enabled them to expand their outreach. You know, now they're not just limited to the people within their vicinity that can attend their gym. Now they can explore elsewhere. So, you know, people who like are afraid to go a non-traditional career path, I think shouldn't be shouldn't be disheartened by the financial aspect of it, because you'll end up figuring out some way to do it. So like for me, like I really enjoy cooking and like making food, and I'm just waiting to figure out how I can like make money off of that so I can quit my job. Like I know that I don't want to be working the corporate route like my entire life. I just need to figure out how I want to like monetize on like food and cooking and that route, because I like to host dinners, I host brunches, I'm that person that always like, and I never like buy food, like I always like to make that for people because I enjoy the process of making the food. So for me, like I'm just waiting to figure out how I can like monetize on that and then quit my job. And then I'm even kind of like thinking of like, you know, how can I like overlap these so that I can kind of build up that income from my non-traditional route and then give the corporate
I
route a
think
boost.
business mentors are the way to go. I know I had mine help me build the online thing, and without that, I don't think I would have done it. I hired this guy named Dave Smith. Forgot the name of his company, but he was like an online business coach for like fitness professionals. And two of my friends actually already hired him, so it was more reassuring because I saw them succeed really fast. So I hired him as well, and it really did help.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, um, just like you reached out to me for coaching, you know, at one point. I mean, if you get the right coach, it
Yeah.
really does streamline and fasten the process for you, like make it very, very fast. Because a lot of times just reading books, I mean, it's great, but it's not going to be really good experience, you know, especially if that
Yeah,
person can relate to you. So
for sure. Well, you know what? I mean, I think for you, I mean, it's weird, and I'm not even just saying this because I'm on this call with you, but you really have been kind of like I had many trainers prior to you, but you really were the trainer where I learned those like core values that set me up for success, where like I don't really feel like I need to like reach out to any other trainers. I came back to you and got a new program. Like I just kind of get refresher programs from you, but at the end of the day, like everything that I learned from you, like I still put it into practice. Like I don't I do the whole like what is it called, the
oh yeah.
mind body muscle connection or whatever. Like I still do that. Like I'm not like if you see me at the gym, like I'm not lifting like super heavy. Like there's guys that are lifting like 3-4 times more than I am, but I look better than they do because they're not focusing on technique, or they're just what is it called, chasing the pump. Like for me, like I'm actually like trying to like get the technique right, get the mind muscle connection going on to really get that. And like most of the time, like I'm a lot more sore lifting lower weights if I'm doing them properly than when I try to like lift super heavy or like try to like show off or whatever it may be. So those things like that are things that I learned from you, where like I still incorporate them. Like I still actually, up until this new refresher program that you gave me, I was still doing your
Oh,
push pull weekly combo thing that I learned from you, like from a dietary standpoint. I was still using your spreadsheet up until like now. I I actually have the luxury of being able to use a meal prep service where they do all that for me. Like I tell them, what my macros should be, and they just deliver them on a weekly basis. But prior to that, like I was still using your program. And I think one of the things that I think a lot of people, especially with the diets, is that they're so afraid of carbs, and like they just want to do these very high protein diets, which are good, but they're not long term sustainable, nor are they going to really give you the results. I feel like, and I emphasize this with all my friends all the time, because that's the biggest misconception, is that carbs make you lose weight. And I'm just like, or make you gain weight. And I'm like, no, like you need that for fuel. It needs to be part of your repertoire. Like that's what you need for energy. Like I'll be at the gym working out with a friend. They're like, oh, I'm so low on energy. And I'm like, well, what did you eat? They're like, well, I ate really healthy. I ate salad and protein all day. And I'm like, well, where are your carbs? So, you need that for fuel and energy. Like your body needs a good balance of everything. Like for you, like, you gave me the 40% carbs, 40% protein, 10% um, fat ratio. And I still use that. And people are like, you eat carbs and you can still look healthy. And I'm like, you actually need
okay.
carbs to look
So
good.
just a
Like, don't be afraid of the
clarification,
rice. Don't be
not
afraid of
10%
the
fat. It was
sweet
higher than
potatoes.
that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I gave you some kind of ratio. Yeah, it was a
Well,
while back.
whatever the ratios were.
10%
Yeah, yeah,
fat
yeah.
is pretty low.
But
Usually,
it
yeah.
was definitely, yeah, but it was definitely like a high. It was the equal protein
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
equal
carbs are super important and nothing
carb
to fear.
ratio.
Of course, there's a place and time. You got to know who you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But I find like even like the keto or carnivore, it's hard to maintain your muscle mass on a very low carb diet.
Uh-huh.
That muscle density is just, you can see they look like very, very depleted when they're on those diets. Even a lot of the carnivore gurus, they're just
Yeah.
very kind of small, depleted. Um, It'll work short term. Anything could work short. A lot of things can work short term, but long term, it's probably not going to produce that appealing, crisp physique as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel it when there's days where, let's say I was traveling, and so going back to your earlier comment of when I travel, my default is just very high protein, because that's just the easiest thing. You're gonna find meat and chicken or something else. But like I noticed that like my lifting strength is so much lower than when I get back on a cadence of eating a balanced diet of protein and carb, because when it's just pure protein, for some reason I don't have the strength that I do when I have a
yeah,
more balanced protein carb
yeah. The omnivore diet
consumption.
is the way to go, where you have a balanced diet. Of course, the ratios of how you set up your macro is going to vary depending on, the person you're dealing with, what their goals are, and it's going to change from goal to goal. Some weeks are very, very active and can need more carbs. Some weeks, you took a week off, it was a deload week or something like that, then you might not need as many carbs, maybe higher fat, for
Yeah.
example, and lower protein or something like that. I mean, there's so many myriad of
Yeah.
variables, a myriad of ways you can do that and structure it.
Yeah,
So
and everyone is different based on their
exactly,
goals
that's
or
why those
whatever
fat diets,
lifestyle
they
it
don't
may be.
work, man.
So
Those fat
there's no
diets
right.
remind me of,
Yeah,
remember that book
yeah.
Animal Farm, George Orwell?
hmm you're gonna be yeah, you're gonna be like miserable too. Like why? Like what's the point of like maybe looking good for like a month because inevitably you're going to like go off
Trying
the
to get,
rails. Like you're not
yeah,
gonna be able to sustain that for a
they're trying to
lifetime.
find easy
So
solutions.
inevitably, like what's the point?
It's hard to do. It's hard, Jerry. It's hard
Yeah,
to do.
what's the point? What's the point of being
Exactly, dude. I
miserable?
tell
I
people
don't
that
know. I
also.
don't
So
get it.
first of all, I will acknowledge it is hard to do all that stuff you mentioned in terms of setting that foundation. It's not an overnight thing. It takes many years
Uh,
of trial and error. We're not saying it's going to happen overnight. But look, your only other solution is to stay miserable and full of obesity and disease. That's it. And that's not easy either, man. That follows you 24/7, every single minute of the day. It impacts everyone around you. Um, that's not that's not easy either, you know. So I'd say, like, dude, your life mission should be to find out who you are and then make sure the world doesn't change you. You know, that's it. That's the mission, man. And
yeah,
that
yeah,
used to be what psychology was all about, finding out who you are. But now
yeah,
psychology, and I used to be so into it, but now I
yeah,
kind of avoid academic psychology because it's been so industrialized. It's like, how can we,
yeah,
solve your anxiety so you can work more hours? How can we solve this so you can have more partners, more, more, more? How could we do this so you can fit more into the matrix? You know what I mean? It's like become so industrialized. It's like corny and cheesy. That's why you rarely see anyone get better
yeah,
from that shit. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, just assess what is going to make you happy. Um, if whatever makes you happy doesn't entail a six pack, then be okay with that. Like don't measure your happiness to the measurement of someone else's happiness or society's perception of what happiness should look like or what the ideal body should look like. Like for me, like I like looking bigger. And so for me, like, I'm not cut all the time. Like, if I'm going on, and this is the other thing that I kind of learned from you, like, I kind of stay within that, like, 5 to 10 pound range where, like, if I do have something coming up that I want to, like, maybe look a little extra cut for, then I have, like, 6 to 4 week time period where I can prep for that. But I'm not going to maintain, a 6 to 8% body fat percentage year round. It's so hard. You're gonna be miserable. Like for me, like I try to eat healthy, and like for me by default, just eating healthy just puts me in the 10 to 12% body range. Where like if I want to look extra good for something, like let's say I'm gonna go on a beach vacation and I'm gonna be like shirtless and I want to look good for that, then maybe I'll like track my macros a little bit more or like make that little extra effort. But for me, like I have made my lifestyle be convenient for me because when I deter from convenience or when I have to do a little bit more work, then for me, like I'm putting myself in a situation where I may fail or I may just kind of be unhappy, then why go through that? And honestly, like I would rather maybe be a little shy for the 1 week beach vacation because I don't have the six pack than being miserable for like months on end trying to prep for
yeah,
that one
or you just
vacation.
be like me and just not go on those vacations and stay at 15% all year round, and be at that happy medium.
and and, and to be quite honest, like I feel like for me, like I'm single, and so like I feel like a lot of the physical activities that I do is for the other the social interaction with the potential mates. Let's go that route, potential mates. And so for me, like I feel like even if I look good, but I'm just like mentally unhappy or not there, like that, I feel like
Yeah, of course.
those vibes and energies and auras, like people can feel them, and like I don't even like get that much interaction with other individuals. Whereas like when I'm in a more healthy, happy, healthy state, like I feel like that energy exudes. And so like even if I don't have a six pack, like I get like more game. Like I feel like when when I'm just like happy about myself, even if I'm not at the top of my body game, like that energy like comes out of me and other people feel it, and like I end up getting more attention that way than I do when I'm just like unmiserable because I was starving myself and like blah blah blah, which I haven't done I haven't been unmiserable in a very long time because I diverted for that. Like I reassess what finds me happy, what brings me happiness with my lifestyle, and I know my lifestyle does not have a six pack. I mean, I have maybe a little four pack, but that's fine enough for me. Like that's good enough for me. Like that's good. That makes me happy. That's all that I need. I don't need to look like, those Insta people with like a 12 pack that are very unrealistic to be happy. I think a lot of people think that'll bring them happiness, but like it won't. Even if you actually like reach that point, to reach that point, you're doing so many things that are making you unhappy that it's like, why are you putting yourself through that to look that way if it's not bringing any joy or adding any value to
Yeah, I
your
mean, look
life?
at me. I don't have six packs. And I own the Six Pack Abs Transformation Group.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I mean, like, and things fluctuate. Like, there's times where I'm just like, I don't know, I don't have as much time to go to the gym or to walk my dog, and so maybe I'll put on a couple pounds, but I'm like, it doesn't like, and that's the other thing that's the other reason why I don't weigh myself is because there's so much volatility with weight. Even throughout the day, you wake up, you weigh a certain weight. By the end of the day, you're probably like 8 to 10 pounds heavier. So there's just so many factors to weight that's why I don't make it part of my lifestyle measurements of fitness success, because I know that there's so many volatilities. Like I could be retaining water for one reason or another. Maybe I had too much sodium, so I'm bloated, and so I may weigh more, or whatever it may be. So I don't know. I just have kicked that boot. I don't even know where the scale
Well, one
is, to
thing
be
I
quite
started doing
honest.
with clients I wasn't doing with you because it's so many years ago is I actually just started focusing on their weekly average weight. So you would,
Hmm.
oh, we
We
were
were
doing
we
that
were
way
doing
back?
that, yeah.
Okay.
We were doing that, and I yeah, and that was cool. And that was but again, like
Yeah.
I don't want to do like a daily measure, like but you know what, but also like I have reached a level of fitness
Yeah.
where like
I was
I
just going
don't
to
need
mention that.
that.
Yeah.
Like for me, like like so so I'm at a point where like if I gain 1 or 2 pounds, even 5 pounds, like it's not gonna make me look terrible. Like I can take 2 weeks off, not work out, eat junk, and probably still look the same. But I have
Yeah.
reached that after many years of just kind of making this a habit and making it consistent, where like I can go on a vacation and eat whatever I want, or not work out, and I know that when I get back, I won't be obese, or even if I'm not as defined as when I first started, like I know that within a week, like I'll bounce. Like for me, like my body bounces back so quickly. Like I can go and I can eat like two large pizzas and I'll look like shit tomorrow, probably, and feel like shit tomorrow. But like after a couple of days, like my body will have processed that, and my body will go back to its natural state of like I feel like I've now taught my body a new natural state where like it will just revert back to that way. But obviously, like, don't do it all the time. Like I would I wouldn't do it all the time, because then you're teaching your body a different type of of, of
Yeah, although I
regular
must
state.
say, as a caveat for listeners here, so Jerry has reached a point of like being very consciously aware of what works and doesn't work for his body. So in the beginning, you have to be very
Mm-hmm.
analytical and track a lot so you can reach that conscious awareness, which he did for probably many years to do
Mm-hmm.
that, okay? Uh, because, like, for example, with keeping close track of your weight in the beginning, I think it's very important because it lets you reflect quickly on your decisions and how they impact your weight, which could lead to more conscious awareness of,
Mm-hmm.
hey, if I do this, it works. If I do this, it doesn't work. So maybe I should just do this on
Mm-hmm.
copy and paste 7 days a week since it's clearly working and this isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with gut health or any or any issue in general. Those detailed notes, keeping those detailed tracks, like, oh, I ate this and it made my gut hurt. Oh, I ate this and my gut felt fine. Okay, well, let's first analyze, why is this food reactive to your digestive system? And of course, but let's eliminate it also so
Mm-hmm.
you don't keep having those constant penalties and having to deal with those gut issues, et cetera, et cetera. It could work for anything like depression,
Yeah.
anxiety, all that stuff.
100,
So
100%. 100%. It took me a long
yeah,
time to get to
but
that point.
intuitive fitness and eating is the
Like
way to
even
go,
now,
but
like
it takes a while to get there. So
uh-huh. it takes a long time because now like I'll wake up and if I'm feeling a certain way, like I can look back at what I ate and then I'll pinpoint of like, oh, that's what that was. Like for me, like going back to, I think we were talking
Hmm.
about earlier in the call, like dairy. Dairy for me is one of the things that my body just doesn't like. I'll get inflamed, like I'll like the next day, like I'll just look pudgy and like just swollen, bloated. So for me, like dairy, yes, I mean that's probably a thing of being lactose intolerant, but like for me, like I know if I wake up and I look bloated and just inflamed, my body just looks and feels inflamed. Like if I look back, I'm like, oh well, I had that, that ice cream or whatever it may be. But also like I know I'm like, well, let's just kind of like give it a couple days before I like allow my body to like have more dairy so that it kind of processes it out and like lets it get back to its normal healthy state. But yeah, no, it took a long time before I can kind of realize what triggers my body. And I think
Hmm.
everyone is different too, as far as what their bodies just kind of don't
Yeah.
react to well. And so like for me, like even like fish just doesn't like vibe with me. Like it's not something that I like in my diet. It makes me feel like I don't know. It just doesn't make me feel great. So I just kind of avoid it now. But no, it definitely took many, many years to get to the point where I don't have to track things to that level. But again, if there's certain things where I know and I anticipate that I want to look a certain way for, so like for example, summer, like for now, like I'm supposed to be like starting to like do a little bit more cardio to kind of like get to that more kind of cut standpoint, but like I know what it takes to get there without being extreme. And I also plan ahead of it. Like, I'm not the type of person who will be like at the gym 2 weeks before summer, just kind of like on the treadmill or stair stepper for like 2 hours on end, trying to like that's
Yeah.
not how the body works. Like, if you had a lifelong lifestyle of being unhealthy, 2 weeks before summer is not gonna do much. So for me, I maintain consistency so that when I do kind of want to up my ante a little
Yeah.
bit, it doesn't take much. It just maybe means like maybe I just need to do 20 minutes more maybe I just need to get to the gym 20 minutes earlier and do like a little bit of cardio or whatever it be. But I think for me, and that's what I kind of going back to what things that I've learned from you is just kind of like keeping that consistency that when I do just kind of want to look a tad bit better, then there's little levers that I can pull to get to that point
Yeah.
without being extreme, without like having to like only eat 1,000 calories a day so you can lose 5 pounds in 2 weeks. I now know all those calculations in my head where I'm like, okay, well, if I want to lose, 4 pounds, and I never want to lose more than 10 pounds. If you maintain a consistent kind of healthy lifestyle, like you'll never have to lose more than 10 pounds. And like for me, like having to lose 10 pounds like baffles me. Like
Yeah.
I want to gain 10
Me
pounds. I
too.
want to be like 190. That's
This
that's
last
that's
10
that's
pounds are
my
being
issue. My
stubborn,
issue,
damn
my
it.
my
You
my,
know?
my issue is getting bigger. And and I hate to say this because there's going to be a lot of people maybe that watches that struggle with losing weight, but like gaining good weight is so hard. It's so hard. Like my natural like weight is like 165. Like if I just don't do anything, so like I have to work towards 180, and like God, it took a long time. Like I'm going on like almost a decade now to try to like reset my body so that like 180 is its like default weight, and now I'm trying to work towards the 190. Like literally the goal is 200.
There's
Like
that
I'm
saying,
6 foot tall.
Jerry, when you
Like
start trying to
my
get big,
arms
you're like forever small. You know?
like my arms are like nicely defined, but because I'm
Yeah.
so tall, like they kind of look like lanky. Like I was just having this conversation with
I think you're like
friends
my
at the
height,
gym
right? Like six
yesterday. I
two.
was like, God, like I'm I'm
Okay. Yeah,
six
around that.
six
I
one.
remember
I
you
don't
being
know.
pretty tall.
Again, I'm really, but but like I feel like 190 to 200 is like a good weight to
Yeah.
be when you're that tall, because otherwise you're like me where you'll be defined and like must you have nice vascularity, but like you don't look like big. Like I look good naked, but with clothes on, I
Well, you
look
got to just
skinny.
walk around with like tank tops and like
So
short shorts like me all the time, then, man.
yeah,
Now you work remote, so you
but
can do it, you know?
but gaining but gaining good weight, it's so hard. Like yes, I can
Yeah.
gain 10 pounds of fat. That's easy. But like the muscle, like it's so hard, and it just requires consistency. And like I know that, and I'm just
Yeah.
being very patient. And I had to learn the patience because I think sometimes you expect it to be overnight. And even for me doing this, being healthy and fit for such a long time, like I still think and feel like I can do it overnight. But then like when I don't get those results, it is a little bit like heartbreaking, because I'm just like, oh man, like I've been working out, like why haven't I gained any weight? But I'm just like, you know what, like I just need to like think about this long term, like, you know, just think about kind of the process of it. Like even actually on social media, I posted the other day, I like the way that the mask that I put on, actually with your program that I started in January, like I like how much bigger my upper body's looking. And so, but right now I'm not as defined as I think I would like to be for summer. And so like I posted on like that, I said something wrong, asked the question along the lines of like having to like decide whether or not to continue that growth progression or like lean down. And most people were like, no, your upper body is looking so much better, bigger, even though you're not as cut. That like you should actually kind of even my friends who are in the fitness industry, they're like, you should like continue that momentum that you have going on now. And like you may not have that six-pack this summer, but like think about what you're gonna look like next summer, and you're gonna have so much more mass that like it's just kind of a small investment right now for the future like growth, which
yeah, and everything that Jerry is talking about too, you guys, it's basically only possible for the most part when you get that foundation right. You know, without that foundation, I mean, you're building a house on top of a shitty foundation. The house is going to crumble eventually, you know? And a lot of people try to do that, and it doesn't work out. It does short term from time to time. You could get satisfactory results short term from time to time. But if you don't get that foundation right, you don't identify your core values clearly and live true to them, like honestly, I don't think there's any hope for you. You could do good damage control. I see some people doing okay damage control, but that's all you're going to be doing your whole entire life. You'll just be on a cycle of, you know, the dam is cracking, you got to patch this up. Then it cracks here, then you got to patch this up. Then you cracks here, and then eventually it's going to go anyways. And like results speak for themselves. Don't believe me? Hey, it's the weekend. Go outside anywhere in America. 9 out of 10 people you run into are full of obesity, misery, and disease. That doesn't happen just out of nowhere for no reason. And no, that is not normal. That is pathological, okay? It is not normal. And I know our society has normalized it, but it's not normal. And I don't think it should be acceptable either. So yeah. Jerry, do you have any closing statements or anything? I didn't think this was going to stretch out to 2 hours. Thought it was going to be 40 minutes. You know?
No, I didn't realize we're going to have so much to talk about.
Well, it was good to catch up. I wanted to catch up with you anyways. Haven't seen you in forever, so.
I literally let that railing back there yesterday. Actually, like I'm super sore today. Like I didn't even go to the gym yesterday, but there was a railing there that I like manly like just like pulled apart. So before this call, I was just like working on that. But like, you know, I find other non-gym things to like actually like stay fit. Like it doesn't always just have to be in the gym to be fit. Like you can stay active other ways, and then think about what makes you happy and then incorporate that into your life and then just go with it. I mean, I think that's what's gotten me through it so far.
Cool. Well, thanks, man. It's been honestly, it's been good to see you and good to catch up overall. I'm glad you're able to do it on this Facebook Live. Have the guts to get on the live. A lot of people don't have that, but that's cool.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, guys. So thanks for everyone that jumped in as well, and have a good weekend. Thank you for always jumping in, and good to see everyone. Okay, take care, guys.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've ever had trouble losing weight, or you've lost weight, but still didn't have the ideal body or health you're aiming for, please feel free to reach out anytime and book an assessment. Eugene will work with you to cover your goals in detail, see what's holding you back, and go from there. In the meantime, feel free to check out the countless testimonials on Eugene's website in the link below. In the testimonial section, you'll notice everyone has various backgrounds, are of all different ages, and all have had different challenges in their life, but they all have one thing in common: they were all able to find their health and achieve their ideal body. You're also welcome to add yourself to the Facebook group in the link below. There you'll have access to the live videos that Eugene does weekly on Sundays, and other helpful content. Thank you again for tuning in.